and welcome back to another episode of We Read It One Night, the podcast where two sisters give you the in-depth analysis of the Twilight Saga that you never asked for. Today, we're wrapping up our discussion on New Moon by Stephenie Meyer. And yes, we too are shocked that we managed to do it in 2 parts this time. Never fear, we bring you even more New Moon bonus content with this episode and proof once and for all that we can sweep the floor with all other Twilight fans. Enjoy the show.
I was thinking about the other day that has caused untold amounts of damage is that moment in the Lizzie McGuire movie when Kate, it's like during their middle school graduation, and Kate is like, Lizzie McGuire, you are an outfit repeater. And the fact that made me think that you like weren't allowed to repeat outfits.
That was
I feel like that's the moment when fast fashion really just like locked its jaws into like everyone under the age of 12 at that time.
Like a hidden like
brainwashing
Sheen sponsorship, like Sheen. 20 years in the making. No,
Shine.
It's pronounced Shein because it used to be something longer.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I've ever heard it said out loud until this moment, but in my head I was saying Shine.
I've just been seeing a lot of posts recently that's like, I've been saying it Sheen in my head, but I've seen a lot of posts recently that it's like it's actually Shein because like there was like it used to be a longer name.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is going to become one of like the age-old like GIF versus GIF debates, except that it's definitely GIF, no matter which way you split it.
Yeah, because GIF already exists with a J and it's peanut butter. Like
GIF exists with a peanut butter, but also GIF stands for graphic image. GIF.
It's a good point.
There's literally no argument for GIF other than the guy that invented it says GIF. But you know what? Like, if I can pretend that like J.K. Rowling didn't write Harry Potter, I can pretend that the guy that invented GIFs doesn't pronounce it like a fool.
We're back, baby. Currently where we are is Bella vomiting on the floor. She's about to get better after 24 hours. And Jacob running around the woods as a wolf, but only for like 12 hours. Like he's like very good at the like phasing in and out thing. We find out from Jacob's POV that the reason that like Quill and Embry and everyone else was gone for like a week is because that's why we finally got our answer to why turning into a werewolf is so fucking traumatic, because not only do you turn into a wolf without any warning because your parents are assholes and don't tell you, but you also can't turn back into a human until you figure out how to calm down enough. So so most of them were running around for like a week, if not more, trapped out of their human form, and obviously you're gonna be freaking out. So obviously it's gonna be hard to calm down after that. But Jacob is like really good at it, and he like figures it out like pretty quickly. But I'm gonna be honest, 12 hours as an involuntary wolf is more than enough to fuck anyone up for life.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Yeah, no, except okay, so what happens? I feel like we just like jumped in there. We didn't really like say. So Bella's vomiting on the floor. We learned from Jacob's bonus content POV that he like gets really mad and then transforms in his house. And like, I don't know about you, but like the size of the wolves like seems to imply like that the roof should have come off. Like it should have been like a fucking like Violet Beauregard turning into a giant blueberry situation. Like everything explodes, but like it wasn't. He almost kills his dad and then he doesn't, and then he spends 12 hours as a wolf. But don't worry, all the wolves can talk to each other with like telepathy, and also are enslaved to the alpha wolf, which is Sam. So Sam is like calming them down like in their wolf form.
Can I just say that's the whole like, oh, they can hear each other talk, so like don't worry, they'll like talk you through the transformation. That honestly is like one of the worst, if not possibly even worse than the alpha enslavement thing, because Sam definitely doesn't like abuse that. You know, it's horrible, like taking away your will. But you know, Sam is not like this big overlord. But the fact that you can never have secrets again, I mean, it's like living with fucking Edward Cullen, except that everyone knows. Like, God, like all the Cullens have been putting up with this, but like the entire you can't have think about that. You can't have a single secret, a single private thought ever.
No.
Ever. From like these 15 other people.
No.
And you're forced, and not only that, but you're forced to like hear all of their private thoughts, which has to be like very, I don't know, like
traumatizing. Just a lot. Yeah, you don't want that. Yeah, Jacob, like think about it. Like Paul imprints on Jacob's sister. So like is he like does Jacob have to see like sexy
That's just like the tip of the iceberg. Like what the fuck? God.
Oh no. We learn a lot of stuff in this one section in the Jacob bonus content. So first of all, just like to further emphasize how okay, so here's the thing about the werewolf forced army conscription. Like I I'm in two minds about this because on one hand, like their attitude in it is like, this literally, my life is over now that I am a wolf shifter being. And on one hand, I'm like, listen, I understand like the anger issues and the enslavement, but like in general, like long term, I feel like being able to turn into a wolf and being immortal and having superhuman like healing abilities and all of the shit that they have is objectively cool. And so I'm always like, I don't really understand why you guys are complaining about this. Also, you have a turn off switch. Once they like don't like know how to control themselves, and then like if you don't transform for a few years, you start aging again and then you die like a like it's not even like a vampire where it's like you're in it for the rest of your life. Like if you want outie, like you can be outie.
Right. It's like, yeah, it's
But
voluntary immortality. Like,
yes. Yeah. No, it's like, it sounds objectively like a sweet
yeah.
deal, like long term. I understand like short term, first few years, it kind of sucks, but like long term, great. But then you have shit like in the Jacob bonus content when it's like, they're saying shit like, forget your studies, just don't kill anyone. And
At
I'm like,
school.
man,
Like, they still have
Jacob
to
like
go to school.
doesn't even
Yeah.
have a GED. Like,
Right.
he has to just focus on not killing. They all basically have to drop out of school. Like,
Right.
and it's so yeah. And then you also have shit like we get like a brief mention of what happened with Sam and Emily. So I don't know whether we mentioned Emily. Emily is
We
like
did. I don't remember
Sam's
her name.
like werewolf soulmate girlfriend, and we're gonna like meet her shortly, but she has like scars on her face because Sam sliced her up, and like Jacob finds out about that like in his first 12 hours, and we find out that it's because like Emily told, like, we don't like know exactly what she said to Sam, but it's like my guess is just it's some version of like no, or like stay away from me,
Because
or
she's
like,
Leah's cousin, who's Sam's ex-girlfriend. So that was like
yeah.
a big deal. Yeah.
And that's why Sam gets so pissed, and then he changes and then like scratches up her face, and like he feels really guilty about it, but like I don't know, like where this seems like a little bit of an excuse, like, oh, he just can't control his temper. That's why he hits you, Susie. Like, it's not his fault. He
Well,
just can't control it. I don't know. It just feels a little bit like it feels a little too like, I know it's different because it's like supernatural and like they really can't control it, but like it just feels a little too close to home in terms of like
yeah.
excusing abusive behavior, like physical abuse.
Yeah, well, except that his intent was never to like touch her in any way. Like he extends his hand, like it said he like extends his hand to be like Emily, like kind of like pining from. But then
Right.
he turns into a wolf, and where his hand is now a giant paw.
I know. And that's why like I can see the difference, but just like the like tone, like the messaging of it is
Yeah,
just so similar to
that's
like,
true.
he hit
Yeah,
you because he loves you. Like,
right.
no.
That's true. Yeah, it just feels very unnecessary. But just like the huge double. I mean, this is only semi related, but like the huge double standard with the wolves, because from this Emily thing, we mentioned this last episode, but she is the person who got severely injured, and then they didn't take her to the hospital because the Cullens were working there, and instead they had her mom show up, or no, sorry, her aunt show up, who's a nurse, Sue Clearwater, and like stitch her up as best as she could without any medical equipment, presumably, and only one
Yeah.
nurse versus like probably a whole team that you would want, like a plastic surgery team.
Yeah.
And they don't take her to the hospital because it might be dangerous, because there's these supernatural beings that don't want to eat people, but there's a slight chance that they could mess up after she's just been injured by supernatural creatures who don't want to injure people but might mess up. Like, where's the lot? Like, what? And like, there's no way Emily consented to not being taken to the hospital. You know what I mean? Because like, I don't think she even knew Sam was like. It's just so fucked.
No. And the story is that she's like
She's
been
not
mauled
even
by
from
a
the
bear.
tribe.
Like,
She's
that's
been
how
what?
bad it is. That she's been mauled by a bear. Like, so that's how bad her
Right.
injuries are.
Yeah, and she's not even from the tribe. Like, it's just so ridiculous that they don't warn people or give them any choice. And yet their whole thing is like, we don't trust the Cullens because they might mess up. But the Cullens go to school with humans and they try to get along, but they might mess up. The werewolves go to school with humans and they're told, just try to get along and not kill anyone. Like, the parallels are just insane. Like, what do you
Yeah. Yeah.
I
So
just like
because the werewolf army doesn't allow them to talk to anyone because they may kill them. Jacob is ignoring Bella. Bella's super sad. And so she's like, I don't know what I'm going to do this weekend. It's the next weekend. Jacob has been ignoring her for a week. Charlie's like, I'm going to go fishing, but remember to stay out of the woods because of the quote unquote bears. And Bella's like, I'm going to actually go for a hike.
It's 2 weeks because it doesn't really matter, but it matters for the timeline. It's 2 weeks after she hasn't talked to Jacob that she does the Laurent thing.
Okay. So 2 weeks later, whatever. So she's like, I'm gonna go for a hike. I'm gonna go search.
Sorry. Because in between those 2 weeks, after the first week, she goes to the hospital and they tell her that neither Billy or Jacob has checked in, which brings me back to why is there no HIPAA? HIPAA does not apply in Forks. Like you can't just give away information. Like what? I mean, maybe the fact that someone hasn't been there is different than the fact that someone has, but it still seems like something you would not be telling the public.
She's
even
not
if you
a relative.
are a relative. Like, yeah, no.
Like I can see them telling like, hey, was my brother in the hospital? But like, you know, whatever. Yeah, so Bella's like, I'm gonna go in the woods by myself. And she does in fact find the meadow. And she has a breakdown. She's like, oh my God, this is a horrible mistake. And she's like curled up like in a little ball in the dead grass. And she's like, how lucky that I was alone. And then Laurent, the evil vampire, one of the evil vampires from book 1, appears at the other end of the meadow and is like, hi. How y'all doing? How are you? And comes over here and he is like, hello, yummy, yummy girl, all alone in this meadow. Good for eating. But here I see like, I feel like, okay, so another plot inconsistency. So Laurent, up until this point, we've been under the impression that he putzed off to Alaska after the whole James debacle to go live with Tanya and her family and like try the vegetarian life. And there he got like pretty toasty with like one of Tanya's sisters, Irina, like just, you know, file that away for future use. So he was like living with them. And what we also know from Rosalie and Edward's POVs is that the Cullens are also hanging out in Alaska with Tanya and her family. So presumably the Cullens have been interacting with Laurent up until recently. Like it's been like 6 months. Like I feel like there has to have been some overlap between them. But like we know Rosalie and Emmett are there, presumably Carlisle and Esme at least. And like yet nobody questions when he leaves and then doesn't come back.
No, I think it easily could be because like when are they in Alaska? Like they're only in Alaska at the end of the book. Before that, we know that like Carlisle and Esme were in like New England somewhere, right? Like Carlisle's teaching at some university. That is said in like,
how do you know that?
Yeah, it's in like Edwards or something. It's in someone's POV. Like,
are you sure?
It's in someone's POV. Yeah, I can find it, but my computer will probably glitch again. But so like there could have easily been like, I mean, he might have heard that they, but yeah, he would have, but yeah, it does seem weird because I feel like he definitely would have known that they weren't in Forks. You know what I mean?
Right, because he asked her, he's like, do the Cullens visit often? Because he's like, I went by their house and I didn't smell them. So he would know. And she's like, and she gets the Edward hallucination. And the Edward hallucination is like lie, whatever. And then, but like Laurent would know, if he knows they're in Alaska, Laurent would know that she's lying about them coming back. And I mean, he knows that she's lying anyway, but it's still like.
Yeah, it seems like he needs that confirmation. Unless he was gone for like 8 months or something.
But that doesn't make any sense because he literally went there less than a year ago.
Well, if he was there for like 4 months, remember that everyone in these books like falls hard and fast. So it definitely would have been enough time for him to like.
I mean, clearly he didn't fall that hard and fast. I know, but I just feel like there should have been some overlap. Anyway, Laurent has putzed because he likes eating people too much. He's like, the Grizzlies just aren't cutting it despite being endangered. Humans are an overpopulation of predators. Wait, we were talking about that in the first Twilight. We were like, where is there ever an overpopulation of predators? It's humans. So the real vampires are the true, like the human eating vampires are the true environmentalists. Actually, they're helping with overpopulation.
Yep. But right as he's about to go in for the kill, who shows up?
He's there. Wait, he's there for Victoria. He's like, Victoria has been putzing around in the background. He's like, I'm scouting out to see whether like you're still protected because Victoria wants to kill you because Edward killed James.
He's like, don't worry, I'll be a lot quicker and cleaner. Like she has a lot planned for you. However, dun 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 dun, the wolves are at it. And this is another inconsistency though, because Laurent is like, I don't believe it. Like, as if he, like, recognizes the wolves, and he's like, how the fuck, you know, he, like, immediately knows that the wolves are a danger to
Wait,
him,
does he
right?
say that in the
Yes.
book, or is that
Yes.
just the movie?
No, it's in the book. It's in the
Oh.
book. He says it, and it doesn't make sense because, like, you know, okay, so I mean, this is like skipping ahead, but these werewolves aren't real werewolves. Like, there are actual real werewolves in universe, yeah, like the Children of the Moon, and the vampires, like, do hate them and kill them to extinction. But it's one, it's not clear that the Children of the Moon are actually like a danger to vampires, right? They're just like
I mean, I think
annoying
they
and give away the
are.
secret.
No, 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 they were dangerous because the reason that they got the Volturi hunted them to extinction because, like, Marcus or one of them had, like, a bad run-in with them, and they got, like, presumably
Oh,
almost
okay,
got
okay. And so
chopped up.
do they look the same as the koi?
I
I thought they
think
looked
so.
different.
I think so because at one point, because okay, again, skipping ahead to to later when the Volturi eventually come in contact with the La Push werewolves, they're like, these are not. They're like, oh, like they call themselves werewolves and like presumably look like werewolves. Like there has to be like there's an explicit clarification that
Mhm.
the Quileute tribe are not like
Gotcha.
moon werewolves and that they're just shapeshifters that happen to turn into wolves, which implies that there's like a similarity in appearance.
Yeah, so that makes sense that Laurent would be scared. So there's like a standoff, and Bella is like, "Oh my god, they're gonna eat me," because obviously, like, you know, Laurent doesn't smell like food, and I'm like a lot slower. You know, it's the classic, like, I don't have to run faster than the bear, I just have to run faster than you.
And there are these wolves are like the size of like trucks, like
Yeah,
pickup
they're
trucks. Like
really
these are
fucking big.
fucking huge wolves.
And so, but they go after Laurent, but not before she makes eye contact with one of them, and she's like, "Wow, those eyes look really familiar. Hmm."
But then
And
she runs away.
naturally,
She
yeah,
runs
she runs
away,
away,
and
and
when she gets home, so she gets home, she drives home, and she locks the doors. And she's both scared of the wolves coming after her and of Victoria coming after her. And she's like, I doubt it will keep any of the monsters out except maybe the wolves because they don't have opposable thumbs.
no, she says, like, "I don't even know why I bothered to lock it because the door alone would be enough to stymie the wolves, not having opposable thumbs."
Yeah, like Bella, these wolves are the size of trucks. If they wanted to get into your fucking house, they wouldn't need opposable. But like the fact that she's like, ah, yes, the wolves will be deterred by their lack of opposable.
My god.
And then we get another Bella once again is being like mental health bad by being like I can't tell anyone about Laurent to the wolves because they'll lock me up specifically in a padded cell.
Well, I mean, she's
And I'm
not
like,
wrong.
I know, but like Stephenie.
So Bella is, like, obviously freaking out. This is, like, very terrifying. She's like, "No one can help me, like, Charlie too." I'm like, "This is all Edward's fault," like, frankly. And she basically, like, goes into shock. Like, she's, like, you know, like,
She's
shaking and,
fucked.
like, naturally. Like, how would you feel? Like, think about it. I can, like, viscerally feel like it's horrible.
Yeah. But she's also like, I still need to get in touch with Jacob because he's still ignoring me, but I can't go to La Push because it'll lead Victoria there. But I also need to go on a rescue mission for Jacob and like deprogram him from the cult. Like she's
Mhm.
making all these, she's like, I don't know how to balance this. Like, how do I get him out? It's like, I don't know, trying to rescue someone from like Scientology. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, seriously. Well, this is, yeah, it's like Eve Brown, kind of. Not really, but, like, I don't know.
not really.
So yeah, and then so Charlie, like, notices, and Bella tells him, like, "I saw the fucking wolves. Like, they are wolves and they're giant or whatever."
He's like, oh shit, gotta go hunting. And she's like, oh fuck, that was a bad move.
I thought it was weird because there was, like, a part where she's like, "Oh, Charlie, like, blames, like, my jumpiness and, like, being scared on, like, Jacob's continued absence." And I was like, "Why not on the giant fucking wolves she told you she saw in the woods?" Like, that would be even without the supernatural element, like, being that close to a giant pack of wolves, I feel like would be enough to fuck up anyone for, like, at least a little bit,
Yeah.
right? Like, if you had a close encounter with an animal like that, it would be like, you know, I would whatever. I would be jumpy for, like, at least a week or 2. Like, I don't
No, I would be like, especially
know.
like living next to the woods, I'm like, I'm never going
Right.
outside ever again. I'm
Yeah.
never going
Yeah.
outside. But yeah, so
She
Bella
drives
rolls on
down.
up. She sees Quill, and Quill is like scared. He's like, I don't want to be next. But then we find out like Quill is next, and he does when he eventually turns, he's like, this is awesome. I finally get to hang out with my friends again.
Yeah, why didn't they fucking tell him? Like, this poor boy, it's, like, so sad. He's like, "Yeah, I tried to follow them, and then they disappeared, and I just spent the past hour stumbling around in the woods, like, calling for them." Like, that's like Bella going after Edward, like, ugh. Just like for what? But so Bella like gives him a ride, and I'm like, why don't Bella and Quill just hang out at this point and just like ditch the rest of them? Like, just find a new friend, Bella. Like,
Yeah, so Bella decides to stake out Jacob's house. And she's just like sitting in her truck, like la di da da da. And then like Jacob taps on her window and she's like, ha! And I'm like, why would Victoria tap on your window?
I know, but you're just jumpy. You're just jumpy. Like again,
I
even just
know.
the wolf
Why
thing would
wouldn't
be
she
enough.
just smash through her window?
Yeah.
And we see that Jacob is cut. I don't think we actually ever mentioned this. Jacob had previous to this very long, like beautiful hair, as is traditional in many indigenous cultures. And Stephenie Meyer, once again, showing her disregard for Quileute and indigenous culture, makes the werewolves cut all their hair. And her interview in universe, like explanation is that like, oh, it makes their like wolf hair easier to manage, which like doesn't make any sense. And it's just like, considering like how important hair is in so many indigenous cultures, it's just like, so like, Stephenie, come on, like why can't they have long hair? Wouldn't that be better? Because it would keep them warm, like they're in a cold climate.
Yeah,
Like,
that's the trauma of the wolf thing.
it's
Like,
such a
just
trauma.
piling
Yeah,
it
like
on.
it's so. Anyway, this is a good place because I didn't mention in the beginning to remind you all to donate to the Quileute Move to Higher Ground Fund to help with some reparations for the exploitation of their culture by Stephenie Meyer for the Twilight Saga. Link in description.
So can I just so Bella's like, Jacob has changed radically in the last week since I'd seen him. And can I just say that it's been 4 weeks, like according to the timeline, and they only hung out for a month before that. So basically Jacob has now been ignoring her for the same amount of time that they were friends. Like, I just want that to be noted for the record. It's still not quite as egregious as the whole like Edward being gone for 6 weeks and then like only there for like however fucking long, like a month in the first book.
Mhm.
But yeah. And she's like, there was a
Soulmates,
darkness
baby,
to
like-
him now. Yeah.
In the movies, they all have matching tattoos for some reason.
Yeah. Bella's like, I wanted to be a vampire so I could hurt Sam Yulee for like doing this. And then she's like, God,
Jesus Christ.
wasn't
She's
supposed
like,
to be
no, she's
thinking about
literally like,
this.
I want to kill him. She's like, I
Yeah.
want
Well,
to
yeah.
kill Sam Yulee. And I'm like,
hurt
Bella.
vampire coat. I mean, it would kill
I mean,
him.
I guess if my best friend, like if you joined a cult and I like go on a rescue mission and I see you, because Jacob taps in her window, but like all the rest of the members of the
Mhm.
werewolf gang are like standing like 20 feet back, like in a line watching. And I guess if I went on rescue mission to rescue from a cult and I see the cult leader there, like I too would be like, I wish I had like a fucking baseball bat to like go at this guy. Like if you
Right.
were like indoctrinated like so
Right.
much, I'd be like, what the fuck? So I get it. I don't know about like the vampirism seems like a lot, but
Well, she's like, I'm not allowed to think about that because it's like, thinking about Edward. Well, the thing I learned apparently that swinging a frying pan at someone's head would be considered deadly force. So a baseball bat probably would too. I mean, it makes sense. I just never like it. Always just it's from the you watch those like Tom and Jerry type like 50s cartoons, and it's like they're constantly tangled. They're constantly like just casually doing shit like that. You never think about it as like that would probably kill someone. It's in Euphoria. That's how the grandmother kills her like another drug dealer. Anyway, don't try that at home,
especially
kids.
A cast iron
right with like enough force, yeah.
For sure, you could kill someone.
But so anyway, so Bella's like, can we talk alone to Jacob? And Jacob and Sam made a brief comment in an unfamiliar liquid language. All I could know was that I was sure it was in French or Spanish. So do they all speak the Quileute language? Like, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think so. That's actually I'm bringing back to the Move to Higher Ground Fund. That's one of the reasons why it's so important that they don't like the tsunami doesn't take out the school, is because like that's where they teach it, and there's just like so few people that know the language yet that if you like wiped out all the new generation, like the language would be dead.
Okay, so Sam lets Jacob and Bella talk alone, and Jacob's like, I can't tell you anything, like leave me alone, I can't tell you. And Bella's like, I hate Sam for doing this to you, like fuck Sam. And Jacob's like, don't blame Sam. If you want to blame someone, why don't you point the finger at those filthy, reeking bloodsuckers you love so much? And Bella's like, how do you know? Like,
I don't know what you're talking about.
Seriously, Bella's just like, deny, which is a good
gaslight.
strategy.
She's like, gaslight, geeky girl boss. She's like, what are you believing Billy now? And Jacob's like, Billy knows more than I gave him credit for. And I'm like, and yet Billy did not warn you, Jacob. It seems like there should be some resentment over this.
That's like Jacob's first thought as a wolf is like, wow, I'm really fucking mad at Billy that he's not surprised to see me as a wolf. Like,
but
as
then he
it should be.
Like, You know, like
Bella's
that
like
does not come back.
Bella's like, was Sam's gang a gang of vampire haters? And I'm like, yeah, kind of. Like that's pretty much
Yeah,
sums it
I
up.
mean, like, basically. But yeah, it's like, for some reason, like, Jacob is like, "I'm not good." Like, he doesn't, like, he's, like, implying, like, that they're bad, like, that they're, like, monsters, which is, like, again, the general tone of the werewolves. But I'm like,
Why is
why?
this
Like,
coming? Yeah, it
what?
doesn't
Just
make
because
sense.
Sam beat, like, injured his girlfriend and, like, that's why like, why are werewolves inherently bad? I don't
Right.
understand. Like, they seem, like,
Right.
generally pretty chill.
Right. Like the only thing that would make sense is to like blame them for not telling you, blame Sam for, I mean, the whole like alpha control thing.
This is just like, oh, you want to talk about another parallel between the werewolves and the Cullens is the fact that like the main
Yeah.
guy, the leader, the creator is just filling the rest of them with like this fucking Catholic
Self-loathing.
guilt with like
Yep.
self-loathing for no reason.
Yeah.
For
No,
no
for sure. And
reason.
Sam really does like it's exactly like he literally like fills Jacob's brain with the exact sensations that he felt when he hurt Emily as like a warning to like not be near Bella. So it's like
Yeah.
the exact same. It's just the same as Edward because he can also read Carlisle's thoughts. You know what I mean? Like he can get the exact picture.
Yeah.
Except I think it's even
It's
worse for Jacob
fucked.
because you not only feel it, you don't only hear it, you like feel it the same thing they're
Yeah, it's like
feeling. It's
everything.
like
It's like
Edward
full
plus
body.
Jasper, like if you combine their
Yeah.
powers.
Yeah, so she leaves and now she's like, because Bella's been like, I have had a hole in my chest this whole time because of Edward. And now she's like, I was now riddled through like Swiss cheese.
She's like, I thought Jacob was
Like, and
filling the
listen,
hole, but he was carving his own hole. But
it's a very accurate metaphor. Like, it's a very, like, I
yeah.
immediately know what Stephenie's talking about, but just like we're in the height, like Bella's like slipping back into that depression, and we get a cheese comparison.
All
It
right.
just
But
feels very incongruous.
I don't know. I think of Swiss cheese. Yeah, holes.
It makes sense, but like I'm like, interesting.
Charlie sees her and she's like, I saw a kind of horrified recognition. Like I realized what I reminded him of, like my face felt empty and cold. And Charlie like calls Billy to like yell at him because Bella tells him like Sam told Jacob he can't be my friend anymore. And Charlie's like on the phone, and all we hear is him like yelling at Billy, and he's like, Bella's made it very clear all along that she and Jacob were just friends. And then like he's like, if it was that, why didn't you say it at first? And so like Charlie is like backing Bella up here. I'm like, why
Yeah.
are you about to change your stance in the next book, Charlie? Like, come
And like
on.
Renee would never. Renee would never like call to chew out a parent for like their kid
No.
hurting Bella. She'd be like, Bella, you know you have to fix this.
No, she might, but she would like make it about herself. She's like, how dare you insult me by insulting my daughter?
How
Like,
dare you imply that I would raise a daughter that would do, you know?
right.
Yeah,
Right.
no, whatever. But Charlie, another thing about the reservation jurisdiction, like, how does this work? Because Charlie is like, the La Push boys better not step out of line or I'll be there. And I'm like, again, does he even have jurisdiction?
No, but presumably like they don't spend their entire lives on the 1 square mile of the reservation. Like if they're outside of the reservation and they do something, then that would have still applied to them, pretty sure. So Bella's like sleeping that night. She's like super sleep deprived because she's been up like, worrying about Jacob, etc. And she hears fingernails against glass. And instead of like, I feel like my instinct, if I heard that and I was like expecting wolves and or like vampires to come after me, I
Oh
would
my
like I would just
God.
cower. Like I would not be able to move. You know what I mean? I would like cower under the covers and like hope that
Oh
instead
my
she gets
God.
right up. She goes right over to the window.
She's like, oh my God, it's Jacob. And I'm like, silly Jacob, don't you know that Edward has greased the windows? Like, you can just open it. Like, don't you know?
And then Jacob like catapults himself into the window. Book Jacob is agile, but much less agile than movie Jacob, which is like full on parkour. Like he just like flings himself. And Bella is like fine. She's like mad. She's like, he's fucking here. Finally, like I've cried myself to sleep over this boy, and now he's here as if nothing had happened. I'm like, all right, well, I wish you would hold Edward to that standard in a few months from now. It's funny because like, and then she's like, worse than that is that even though his arrival had been noisy and awkward, it reminded me of when Edward used to sneak in my roof. I was like, what a burn. Like,
You're not as good at sneaking into my bedroom as Edward
it still
was,
reminds me of
Jacob.
that. Yeah.
Loser.
So Jacob,
Like a pale imitation. Yeah, Jacob's like, I have a secret and I can't tell you because I'm too loyal. And I'm like, it's not loyalty, Jacob. It's just like it's control magic. Like it's not you just are literally he's described as like choking on his words.
He doesn't say it's because he's too loyal.
No, but it's like he's like the language of it. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not quoting
language of it
here.
is like, have you ever had a secret that you couldn't tell anyone, a secret that wasn't yours to share? And my thing is like, Bella has that. Like, he's saying because he knows Bella has that. But, like, with Jacob, like, it is his to share. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't. It's
Yeah, that's
not
what I'm saying.
like
He's not sharing. Like the not mine to share implies some sort of like implicit
right,
loyalty,
right.
you know? And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's not loyalty. It's because you're literally magically controlled against saying anything, Jacob. And then he's also like, I'm in this for life. And I'm like, no, you're not. You have
Well,
an
but
out. In a few years, you have an out.
here's what I wonder is, can the fucking alpha command you to not stop transforming?
No.
Can they take that away from? Why not?
But Sam wouldn't do that because Sam's gonna eventually gonna stop like pretty soon because otherwise he's gonna outlive Emily.
Yeah. But, like, wouldn't Sam if they were in danger? Like,
No, because evidently there's like an endless supply of like
you
prepubescent boys ready to like grow up and become werewolves.
They're just getting younger and younger, I think is what it is.
Yeah,
There's
no, by
girls
like the
too.
last book, they're like
12.
12-year-olds, like bopping
insane.
out of the woods, like middle schoolers.
It's
Oh my
insane.
God, that's traumatizing. Like your balls haven't even dropped yet, and suddenly you're becoming a werewolf.
That's another thing that doesn't make sense because I'm not like, I can see why I would think being a werewolf would be traumatizing. And one of the big things it would be having to like hunt sentient beings in the woods, you know, and like put yourself in danger. But Jacob's like, no, that's the part that I really like. Like, I don't mind that. So, like, what exactly is, I don't know. It's unclear what exactly Jacob's problem with it is. Like, because he seems to like all the things that I would not like, you know?
He's been gaslit. He's
Yeah.
been
It's just like vague, like, I'm a bad
stupid.
person.
Yeah. But yeah, this whole scene is like but Jacob's like, remember the story that I told you on the beach about like the origin story, and Bella's like, about the vampires, and he's like, no, the other fucking origin story, Bella.
It's
Like,
like, I can
come
see why you'd
on.
only remember that one.
And this whole scene is like objectively like it is really sad because like Jacob's like, please, like, remember, like, oh my, like, it's really because like they're saying goodbye to each other because basically if Bella doesn't figure it out, like they can never talk to each other again.
Right.
But and it's just it's really the last time that I have any positive feelings towards Jacob Black. Like, this is the last scene where I'm like, oh man, I really feel some sympathy for Jacob Black. And every scene after this, I'm like, you can suck my dick, Jacob Black. Fuck off. I'm like me giving Jacob a chew toy filled with vampire venom. That's how I feel about Jacob the rest of the book. Vampire venom is deadly.
I mean, he's like,
To
he's
werewolves.
like fine after this. I don't know, until Alice comes
No,
back.
he's still so like, and this is like, that's the end of sensitive Jacob, because when she figures it out, he's like constantly making references to like how much vampires suck and how much the Cullens suck, and like pumping Bella for information about them. And it's just like before he was like, I know not to say Edward's name because Bella gets sad every time the Cullens are brought up. But after this, he's like, absolutely, like, no, like, I'm just gonna continue talking about how much I hate vampires, even though it's like upsetting Bella. R.I.P. early new moon, Jacob.
Bella goes to sleep and she wakes up. She has a dream, and it's like a variation
always.
on the same dream she's had. Yeah. But it's the same dream that she had a year ago when she first met Jacob, except this time she realizes that the wolf that had the familiar eyes is Jacob's Black's eyes.
And then she's like, wasn't one myth enough for one person? Because she's like, why can I only relate to supernatural creatures? Why do I have no friends that aren't supernatural creatures?
And she somehow remembers word for word every single thing Jacob said on the beach, which, like, how? But I thought this quote, I feel like this quote could be like the intro to some like supernatural show. It was like, what kind of a place was this? Could a world like this actually exist, where ancient legends went wandering around the borders of tiny, insignificant towns? Like, it sounds like an intro to like what I imagine Buffy the Vampire Slayer is, even though I've only ever seen like one episode years ago. But was there anything sane and normal at all? Welcome to Buffy's world. I don't know.
Exactly. So Bella is like, all right, it's time to fucking confront Jacob Black. But on her way out, she sees Charlie, and Charlie is like, there's been another attack, but no sign of a body, just a little blood and some wolf prints. And I'm like, why is Victoria so sloppy with her snacks? Why is she wasting blood? Like, I don't understand. The Cullens manage to drink blood without spilling any. Victoria's been around long enough. I don't understand why she can't just like pop out her bendy straw and slurp them right up without spilling anything. But Charlie's also like, now there's a reward out for wolf carcasses. And I'm like, no. They're already endangered. Somehow this is still the Cullen's fault. Like this is still because they're not getting the fucking Quilly wolves. They're getting like the poor 5 wolves, like wild wolves that are living in this
Yeah,
area.
I didn't think of that. Oh my God. Yeah, and Bella's like,
horrible.
no. And Charlie's like, you're not turned into a tree hugger on me, Bella. Are you? I was like, wow, LOL. I was a literal tree hugger. I would like everyone to know.
It's true, Rachel. Our tree, what was it? Got struck by lightning.
Yeah.
And then you like hugged it goodbye before we like.
When I was like 8.
But Bella's also like, she like thinks the wolves. She doesn't realize it's Victoria. She thinks it's the wolves that are killing people. She's like, oh my God, Jacob's a murderer. But I mean, I don't really care that he's a murderer.
No, it takes her a while to get there. Like a lot. Because with Edward, her immediate thing was like, I don't even care if he eats me. Like he can eat me. I don't care. Eat me up. Slurp me up. With Jacob, she's like, she like has a moral dilemma. She's like, I don't know if I should warn him. Like he's killing people. Like I don't know. But and she's finally like, I'll go warn him. But like, I'm not gonna have anything to do with him. You know. Like
yeah, but she's still like, I don't know. Her vibe is still like, I'm a little bit cool with him like being a murderer because he's still my Jacob or something.
Well,
like
she's like love makes you irrational or whatever. Like I don't want him to
like,
die.
He's a serial killer,
but
Bella.
We've talked about this. Like if you find out that one of like your family member is killing someone, like I mean,
if I found out you were a serial killer, Rachel, I would turn you in.
You have no loyalty. Like I can't fucking believe this.
I would be terrified that you would come for me next.
Listen.
Frankly, it's self-preservation. I don't want to go to jail.
Listen, there's a line between turning someone in and saying, I'm going to go let you get massacred in the woods, which is what Bella would be doing essentially if she didn't warn them. She thinks, you know. Can I just say, well, Bella, you skipped over a bunch of my notes on this.
Oh, sorry.
That's here, but can I just say that Bella, her first reaction, she wakes up screaming and she's like, and we're like, finally, Bella's having an appropriate, like hysterical reaction to something like this. Whereas she even to herself, she's like, I accepted the vampires without like freaking out. Like, and she also like she's like, I put on the first clean clothes I could find, not bothering to make sure that they matched. And it just made me realize that I feel like making sure my clothes match at this point is like such a foreign concept at this, like, unless I'm dressing up, because like almost all my pants at this point are like black or jeans, you know, it's nothing like the colors of the 2000s. Like, you know, having my like yellow and purple, like Victoria's Secret pink sweatpants and like making sure not to wear anything like, you know,
to match my moccasins.
Like not make sure I wear that with like a purple like cami instead of a like I don't know, like red one or like plaid or something. It's so funny.
Well, I'm also like, I don't care, like even if I'm like wearing bottoms that are like a different color, like I just leave the house so infrequently, and when I do, it's like to go to Chipotle or to hang out with friends, and like neither of those circumstances are things in which I care.
Yeah, but it would just be so hard. It would be so hard for my clothes not to quote unquote match at this point, though, is my main thing. Like I
have so much black and like
or like wardrobe. Just like neutral color, like, you know, one colored things. They're not like, so I don't know. She gets to Jacob's house. Billy greets her. Billy is like, can see that Bella says something that makes Billy realize that she knows. Like Jacob's like, or Bella's like, you know what my dad's doing tonight? Like today, Billy, he's in the woods looking for wolves. It's like, and Billy's like, oh fuck, she knows. She lets her back into Jacob's room.
But Jacob's sleeping like a little baby, and she's like, I'm gonna go wait on the beach.
And he's so big at this point that even though he has like a queen size bed and he's on it diagonally,
he has a single bed.
Whatever. He's on the bed and his feet are hanging off one side and his head is hanging off the other, which is just like the most uncomfortable thing I could ever. Why don't people just sleep in fetal position like a normal person, aka me? Like, or at least wouldn't you rather have like all of your legs hanging off than your head? Like what?
No, I don't know. If you get enough, like, I don't know. Yeah, no, Jacob definitely doesn't have a queen size bed. His room is described as a closet. Like a glorified closet.
As barely
his closet-sized bedroom.
No, because
his closet-sized bedroom.
But there's barely enough room around the sides. No, it's because it's definitely a queen-size bed because
no,
we all prove it because she's like, even though it was a blank size bed, his head hung off one side.
Okay, anyway, in the movie, when Bella comes up, like she rolls up, Billy greets her at the door and she's like, I need to talk to Jacob. And Billy's like, Jacob's not here. And then Bella's like, okay, but I really need to talk to him. And she just like pushes past this poor man. Like he can't do anything to stop her. And I'm like, if it was this easy the whole time, like why didn't you just do that, Bella?
It's a double bed. He was stretched diagonally across the double bed that took up
Okay,
all
so
of
the
his room
size
but a
of
few
bed that we
inches.
had as children?
No, a double bed is only a few inches smaller than a queen.
No, that's a full.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
A double bed is slightly bigger than a single. It's college dorm room beds. That's a double.
No, that's a extra long twin. No, a double bed and a full-size mattress have the same dimensions. In fact, the term double bed and full-size mattress are often used synonymously.
All right. Well, what the fuck?
It doesn't matter. Still sleep in fetal position, people. Like, I don't get it. Just curl your knees up. I don't really have any sympathy for you. I mean, it does suck to be too tall for things, but like, don't with your head off. Again, no, I take it back. I don't have any sympathy for you because I'm jealous. Frankly, I'm jealous of the ability to sleep in such non-sleep conducive conditions. Like, if you can fall asleep with your fucking head hanging off a bed, like that's a fucking superpower. That's like next level from like falling asleep with the TV on. Anyway, so Bella goes to the beach.
After brooding on the beach, Jacob finally comes out, and Jacob and Bella, like, so this whole conversation is like a whole miscommunication that thankfully is like cleared up like at the end of this conversation. But like, Jacob knows that Bella has figured it out. And like, he, before he left last night, was like, if like you don't want to see me, like just call me. You don't have to see me in person. And Jacob was like, you could have just called, because he sees the look on Bella's face. Because like, so Bella thinks that he kills people and is like upset about that, and Jacob thinks that like she just like dislikes him because he's a werewolf, and like he's like, what, I'm not the right kind of monster for you. And I'm like, again, turning into it, like, why would she dislike you just because you were a werewolf? Right. That is objectively cool.
And I will give it to Stephenie because there was room here for even further miscommunication when Bella says, could you just find a way to not kill people? Because Jacob could have thought that she meant like vampires. Like, she could have meant like not kill vampires. You know what I mean? So hand it to Stephenie for letting it get cleared up. No, Jacob's like, you're just scared because I'm a murderer. That's the only reason. Like, he's pulls a total like Sirius Black. I don't deny it. Like, with that. But yeah, it's the redhead.
He's like, it's the redhead, and we got her boyfriend. And Bella's like, Laurent? And he's like, who the fuck is Laurent? Like, what? Like, what do you mean? Why does he have a dumb name? Bella's like,
they have names. But this is also the first time that he calls her Bella honey. He just pulls out the random fucking endearment. You're right though. This is adds to the case of like this being when Jacob goes to the dark side, because like, what the fuck? Yeah, I mean, hopefully by this point everyone's, I don't know if I've ranted about this, but I hate like out of context endearments. Like, if there's no reason for it, if you're calling someone sunshine and it's not because you've had long conversations about how they love the sun or how they're the sun in your life, like, just don't. Anyway. We know that the werewolves look physically 25. Like, that's part of the transformation, which was also fucking terrifying. Imagine if you're 12 and suddenly you're 25. But if it's physical, does that affect your brain? That's what I want to know. Or is your prefrontal lobe like still not done cooking? Because if it is, then like they've even less excuse for like being as volatile as they are.
I don't think so. I feel like their brains still got some time, like, because it's still like experience, you know, like,
right. Well, sure, but like the decision-making capabilities. But that would also, if their brain does speed up, that would also like, that's also bolstered by the fact that he starts randomly calling her fucking Bella honey, because you're 16. Like, why are you calling an 18-year-old honey unless you suddenly think you're 25 and you're older than her? Like, what?
Gross. Yeah. Anyway, so they decide to go back, and the werewolf, like, they see the rest of the werewolf gang approaching, like Bella and Jacob walking side by side, and the werewolf gang is approaching and they're moving in synchronization, and I just like can't help but like picture like a boy band. Like, suddenly like the werewolves come out of the woods, and they're like, oh my god, we're back again.
Yeah.
And they just like burst into like synchronized dance.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Where is our werewolf boy band? That's
I don't know. Like, they can perform at the Vampire Winery.
Oh my god!
Oh.
It's all coming together. It's seriously, any vampires or werewolves listening to this, we will take a small commission for this business idea, but otherwise
75
like,
to 80%. That's all. All right.
And you know what? God. I'll throw in a pint of blood once a week for you.
God. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So basically, they find out that Jacob told Bella, and This really pisses off Paul, who's like he's like the Jasper of the werewolves. He's like the least good at like controlling himself, and he transforms into a wolf, which makes Jacob have to like phase on the fly to protect Bella, and they go like rolling off into the woods.
And as they're rolling off battling into the woods, the remains of Jacob's clothes fluttered to the ground. So basically these poor boys who are already living in poverty conditions are constantly shredding their clothes.
And one of the kids is like, Billy said that was the last pair he could afford. I guess Jacob's going barefoot now. I'm like, this pack needs like a fucking Costco or Sam's membership. Like that's what they need to get like, 20 pairs of shoes for $20. Like that's the move.
Yeah. Like this is what the tribal dues should go towards like now.
So before Sam goes to like break up the fight, he's like, take Bella to Emily's. And so who is it? Like who takes her? I don't know. Two of the boys.
Embry and Jared, who are the other two werewolf boys, roll up. They go to Emily's, and Emily, we see her super scarred face, and they're like, don't stare. Sam doesn't like it. And I'm like, yeah, Sam doesn't like being reminded of his fucking abuse. I get that.
Before they go to Emily's, though, Jared picks up Jacob's clothes litter, like the scraps, which is yet just another way that all these other like mythical creatures are more environmentally conscious than the irritated bear eating Cullens.
Yes.
So Emily has some like really good sounding muffins that Bella like naturally doesn't eat any of.
Muffins.
Yeah,
I really
Bella,
want some.
like never eats any of the delicious food she has access to.
Delicious. Yeah, but this is where we learn that Emily was mauled by a bear, and I'm like, yeah, Emily, like I know she wasn't actually mauled by a bear, but like Emily could have used some of our bear survival tips. Like if you listen to our podcast and you're not dating a violent werewolf shifter, you will not end up like Emily, maybe. Hopefully. Actually, Emily's alive, so like I guess she could have followed our bear advice.
So she still can. Yeah, it's not too late. So they're all just like having a nice fun time. It's like another kind of vibe, similar vibe to the pasta party like last episode. It's just like a nice like family homey, like they're all hanging out. And then Jacob and the rest of the gang show up.
And then her and Jacob have a chat, and Jacob sees, so Bella has like a scar on her wrist from where James like bit her, and it's like, shaped like teeth, and it's like slightly cooler, and he's like, oh my god, how are you not a vampire, like if you've been bitten? And she's like, Edward sucked the venom out, like a rattlesnake. And I'm like, no!
I know, because I was actually thinking when we made the talks about it, I was like willing to give her a pass because I'm like, maybe this is some kind of like vampire lore. It still doesn't make sense how Edward wouldn't have gotten his own venom in Bella, but I was willing to give her a pass. But no, like you can't suck the venom out of snakes, people. Don't you waste your time and just don't fucking do it. Just
but yeah,
tourniquet that shit or whatever. I don't know.
Really pissed at the idea of like Edward of Bella getting like hurt, not of Edward sucking the venom out, but he's like, oh my god, like I can't believe you almost died. Because she's like, yeah, remember like last year when I like broke my leg and all that, like that was that. And he's like, tell me something else to think about. And I'm like, Jacob is trying to calm down, just like Edward calms down, because when Edward saves her from the rapists in the first book, he's like, talk about something, anything, like so I can calm down.
Yeah.
So again, this is why Jacob is also abusive.
I mean, and like it's a running theme of like Edward,
parallels.
Violence,
So since she's chill, they're hanging out with the werewolves every day. She tells them all about. She's like, yeah, Victoria is after me. Laurent like wasn't her mate. Like all of this, blah 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 blah. She gives them the rundown. She's like, Edward can read minds. Alice can see the future. Like she gives them all the intel on all the vampires that she's ever met, and she's like hanging out at La Push, and like they're protecting her.
For their safety.
She's also like, oh no, you're going to get killed by Victoria. And he's like, nah, we can kill vampires all we want. Then Bella is like, we should, like, Jacob's like, we should go on a date or something, because like I'm always like on guard duty, and like you're always hanging out here, like we should do something fun and just hang out. And so they decide to go cliff diving, and Bella's like, a date with Jacob and a date with Edward. Like, oh my god. She's back on that hallucination bullshit.
Yep.
So she's gonna go, but then like Jacob can't meet her or whatever, because like Victoria has like come near the reservation, so they're all like, they've all gone out hunting, and Bella's like, I can't be alone because then I'll start thinking about Edward. So she's like, I am gonna go cliff jumping by myself. And she goes to the cliff, and she's like, Yeah, my like there's a storm brewing, so like already not ideal conditions, but it's also specifically like an electrical storm because Bella's standing on the edge of this cliff and she's like, "Yeah, my hair is standing on end from the electricity, but I'm gonna jump in the water anyway." And just in case you guys don't know, if you are ever outside and your hair starts standing in end, you run. You fucking run for cover because the electricity is so fucking charged. Your chances of getting struck by lightning are so high. And this
Really?
dumb bitch is not only, yes, it's like a common thing, especially when you're hiking above the tree line. If your hair starts to stand on end, you need to either like go for cover or you need to like get down on the ground, like make yourself like
Huh.
not as much like it's an outdoorsy hiking advice. Anyway, but Bella is like, not only am I going to stay outside with my hair standing on end, I'm going to stand near these big ass trees and then I'm going to jump in the fucking water. I'm like,
Yeah.
does
Wait,
she
it's
wanna
literally
get
about to.
electrocuted?
It means lightning is about to strike you. Holy shit! I never knew that.
Yes. If your hair starts to
What does
stand
it
on
look?
end,
Wait,
like
what is that? Oh, damn! What is it? Okay, so it's a lot more than just like frizz in the winter from like static.
no,
Holy
it's like your hair
shit!
is like up above your head. It's a common
Damn.
thing when you're hiking,
Yeah.
especially above the tree line.
No, it means you're literally. It's not just like a high risk. It's like you're about to get struck on lightning.
Yeah,
Okay,
so you want to like,
we should do a tip about this. Drop to your knees and bend forward, but don't lie flat on the ground. Wet ground
Yeah.
is a good conductor of electricity. Wow, good tip.
Bella's like, fuck that shit. I'm jumping in the water.
I was about to defend her because I've been lured many a time by like, oh, the day is suddenly warm. Let me go for a nice little like stroll. And it turns out that it's just because it's about to fucking like thunderstorm and then I get caught in the rain.
No.
But
No.
wow.
That's not what
Wow.
Bella's doing.
That's freaky.
Like we get explicitly her hair is standing on end. Like, oh boy, like why isn't Edward already there? You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
Edward doesn't appear until she's like about ready to jump off the cliff. But I'm like, Edward should have been following you like as soon as you went outside. He should have been like, get back in the fucking house. Anyway.
Wow. Sorry, I just got distracted reading about there's
Yeah,
there's apparently
anyway.
like a picture. Like I guess before there were like cliff selfies, you know, of like to warn people, you know, like the classic like you're gonna fall off a cliff. There was like a you know, quote unquote viral picture from the 80s of like two brothers with their hair standing on end, like right before they got struck by lightning. It was like one of those like quicksand things. Like it was like used to like warn people about the dangers of lightning strike. They're still alive because they were interviewed. They were like, yeah, we were really fucking dumb. Like,
yeah. No, I learned that from I watched a bunch. I went through a period where I just watched a bunch of people hiking like the Appalachian Trail and like the Pacific Crest Trail. And like at one point in all of these people's, like they either do video series or like one long documentary. And at one point, there's always a time in which they're like standing on top of a mountain and they're like, oh no, my hair's standing on.
oh God.
And they have to like run and like hide under a rock.
God. Man. Oh, don't get on the ground. Just bend forward. I don't even know. Duck. What is it? Duck down and bend forward?
Yeah, I think it's like make yourself as small as possible, but don't like touch as much of the ground.
So Bella, I'm not suicidal swan. Into the waves she goes.
And she's like, well, I just realized I'm just now wondering in quite a worried way whether I might have made an error. Except she's not wondering whether she's made an error. She's like, oh no, the current is super strong and I can't swim and or like I can't swim, but like I can't fight against it. But like, you know, this is an easier death than I probably would have gotten on the whole. So why not just embrace it?
Yeah.
And
Well,
I'm like,
Edward is telling her there to like fight. And she's like, why would I bother fighting? I don't really want to do that.
Like, this is kind of nice.
She's like, some people have their life flash before their eyes, but I have Edward's face flash before my eyes.
Yeah, anyway, so she gets rescued by Jacob, who starts giving her like reverse CPR. Like he starts like hitting her on her back like he would have fucking burp a baby.
Yeah,
I'm like,
from his, she's like, was I dying again? It wasn't as good as the last time. I didn't like it.
She thinks she's being slammed against a rock.
Right.
It's just Jacob hitting her
Right.
back.
I know. And I always thought like, oh, maybe just the way she's describing it is weird. Like Jacob's doing like normal CPR, but like, you know, her back is being slain. She's on like a rough surface or something. But no, from Jacob's POV, he's like, man, I wish I took CPR in school. All I can think to do is hit her back.
like a fucking baby. I don't understand. I just feel like even if you've never learned CPR, I feel like is that not just common knowledge that it's like you're pressing their chest? And you're like, even if you don't know how to do it correctly.
Well, I said this though, like to me, if I was thinking about it logically, it would not make sense to have the person on their back because that seems like the hardest position to like cough up water from. Like I feel like leaning over would be if you could do that somehow. Like that would seem like the most logical thing to me. But it also just makes me think that Stephenie Meyer just did not know what CPR was when she wrote it, and then she found out and like put that correction in because why would you put like bad CPR in the book? You know, if you have the like if that even fools like one person, that's like enough damage done. Like you're doing that for what?
So Bella's on the beach. She's been rescued, and she sees a flickering flame on the water, and she doesn't realize until much, 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 much later that that is Victoria's hair, because it turns out that the werewolves chased Victoria, but then she jumped into the water to get away with them because vampires are really good swimmers, which is a weird vampire lore fact that we get randomly thrown in at this one point. And then we also find out the rest of the wolves aren't around because Harry Clearwater had a heart attack. And in the movie, I really like the movie. I'm going to pretend that the movie scenario is canon. I'll tell you what the book scenario is. But the movie scenario, like Harry is like quote unquote hunting the wolves with all the rest of the guys, but like secretly like covering the wolf's tracks. And then he sees Victoria, and like Victoria gives him the heart attack. And like that makes much better because in the book,
it's not actually in the book, but like this is something she said later.
This is Stephenie Meyer has confirmed that. So his daughter Leah becomes the one and only female werewolf. They didn't think women could be werewolves up until this point. And in the book universe, the reason Harry has a heart attack is because his daughter Leah transforms in front of him for the first time. So Leah not only she has all this, and we'll get into this in like Eclipse and Breaking Dawn, but Leah just really gets fucked over. Like if she is the one situation in which I'm like, yes, the werewolf thing has ruined your life. Like, definitely understand that. But not only does she have all that shit, she also has like the guilt of like having caused her father's death.
It's just so fucked.
Why does Stephenie Meyer hate Leah so much?
She hates Leah. She hates Rosalie. Like she hates like many women.
She hates pretty women.
It makes me so angry. Like, and Leah, like, even like, I mean, we're not given any like evidence of this, but we're told that like Rosalie is selfish or whatever. We're not even told, like, there's no reason that like Leah should constantly get the short end. Like she does nothing. She does nothing wrong. She's so loyal. Like she's as loyal as Bella. Like makes me so mad. And you know what might have solved the situation a little bit? Maybe wouldn't have fixed it entirely, but maybe warning your fucking children that they could turn into wolves, and or the people around them could turn into wolves. Maybe that would make it a little less of a shock, and they could have prepared everyone involved. Maybe. Because like again, they would have noticed the signs in Leah. Like it shouldn't have been that much of it. Like
the werewolf patriarchy.
100%.
Like the werewolf industrial complex.
Yeah, God. And then Seth turns into a wolf like in response to his dad's death, apparently. Like she's also said that. Which is Leah's little brother.
So Leah's also not going to feel guilty about dragging her brother into the werewolf army.
True.
Wow. God, Stephenie, why do you hate her so much?
I mean, Seth probably would have been a wolf no matter what. You know what I mean? That just like triggers it.
But like sooner, you know? So she gets home, and she's also like, she's like thinking about, she's like, wow, like maybe I could actually date Jacob. Like it definitely wouldn't been even nearly as good as dating Edward, but like Jacob wants this so much. And she's like thinking about this. We get another Romeo and Juliet analogy where she's like, you know, like what if Romeo really never did come back and like Juliet just went with Paris, which like, let me just remind everyone that in the play, Juliet is 13 and Paris is like 25. Like
I thought he was even older than that.
He's white. Like you think at least Romeo's still a child. That's what I'm saying. Like Paris is a full grown ass adult man wanting to marry this 13-year-old girl. And she's like, Juliet like never would have moved on. And I'm like, she was 13. She most certainly would have moved on, Bella. Like she would have gotten over it. But she's like, I guess like Jacob wants to date so much I can date him. And I'm like, or you could just like not. It's fine to just not date anyone. And like you just don't have to be in a relationship at all, Bella. That's also an option.
Like at 18 especially, like just move on with your life. I do like, this is another one of those examples of like the very specific like scene, like you get the feeling. She's like, Jacob's breathing like the ticking of an old clock when you had nowhere you needed to go. It was the sound of comfort. I feel like that's it gives me the feeling of like being in like your living room with like, you know, the very specific golden afternoon light shafts, you know what I mean? Like the specific ones coming in, you can see the dust motes, and you have like the clock ticking, and it's like very calming and like you're taking a little nap. Yeah. Warm and like cozy, and like you're taking a little nap, and it's just like quiet.
Or even, like, when you've been outside all day at the beach and, like, it's, like, hot, and then you come back in and, like, you've, like, just taken a shower and, like, you're wearing a comfy sweatshirt and your hair is all wet and, like, that
Mm.
specific type of, like, warm and, like, tiredness, but not exhaustion, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and you take a
Yeah.
little nap before, like, you have
Mhm.
dinner. But that's soon over because guess what? Jacob pulls up at her house, Bella's about to get out, and he's like, "Oh, no, a vampire's here." And he is ready to use her ancient truck to, like, speed. He, like, swerves down the street, but then Bella sees a car, and she's like, "Oh my god, I memorized the Cullen's license plates years ago, and that's
Yeah.
Carlisle's car." And she's like, "I gotta go, Carlisle's here."
I guess they have, like, specific, like, fancy cars, you know, and, like, Bella can recognize it at this
I
point.
know, but, like,
Yeah.
she knows other license plate numbers too.
So, yeah, Bella goes back in.
Bella's like, "I have to go, it's the Cullens," and Jacob's like, "No, you don't," and she's like, "I have to," and then he's like, "Bye, Bella. I really hope you don't die."
Yeah. He's like, "Treaty or no treaty, that's my enemy in there." Like, "All right."
Jesus
You
Christ.
don't die. Like, that's
Anyway, it's not Carlisle, it's Alice. Alice is here.
but the way they do it is, like, so dramatic. It's like Bella goes into the house, flicks on the light, and
And
her
she's fumbling
visitor.
around with the light. She, like, spends,
Yeah.
like, half a page, like, fumbling around in the
She's
dark
like,
with
"What
a
if
light
Victoria did a
switch.
trick?" She's like, "My visitor was standing behind me." And then the chapter ends. The next chapter, it's like, Alice was the visitor. Ha ha
Stephenie.
ha.
I really think Stephenie, like, would have thrived in the era where, like, your books were, like, serialized in the
Oh my
newspaper or, like, and you know what I
god.
mean? The Charles
Yeah.
Dickens, like, Louisa May Alcott, like, all of those writers where you have to end everything on a cliffhanger so that they'll wanna, like, tune in. Like, she would have been in her fucking element because, like,
Yeah.
she's
Creates the
so, like,
suspense.
she just goes gung ho and, like, in a book, in something that's never gonna be released in a serialized
But you still
edition.
feel it,
Like,
you know?
I know, but it's, like, literally the next page,
I
like,
know, but
"Oh, and it was
still.
Alice." I know, no, I know, but it's just so it's, like,
That's how it
she's
is in a movie.
shackled. She's
Yeah.
shackled by the book format. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah,
Like,
it's
she would have
true.
thrived in the serial.
Yeah.
She rolls in, she sits down, and she's like, "Oh my god, Alice!" And she hugs her, and Alice is like, "Hi, Bella. How are you alive? Also, why do you smell like wet dog?"
Did she immediately say that? Because I was wondering. Okay, yeah, because she doesn't really go in. Because I was like before thinking that Alice like goes right in with like the dog insults, but like she says it like she doesn't know it's the wolves at this point, so it's not like actually directed at like
Then she's
people.
like, "Oh, my friend Jacob's a werewolf." And then Alice is like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you're fucking hanging out with werewolves." And Bella's like, "There's nothing wrong with werewolves."
Yeah, and Alice is like confused why Bella's alive because she saw her jump off a cliff but didn't see her come up out of the water, and Alice is like, "Bella, you look terrible." And Bella's like, "I just drowned." And Alice is like, "No, it goes deeper than that." And Bella's like, "I'm doing my best. Like, what did you think you would find?" And Alice is like, "I hoped." Like, "I hoped." And I'm like, "What? How the fuck would you hope,
You see the
Alice?
fucking
Like,
future,
you think you're
Alice.
always right. So why would you think you're wrong?" Like,
Yeah. So anyway, Alice can't see the werewolves and she's like, "Ah, man, I told everyone that you were dead except for Edward. And why are you hanging out with werewolves?" And then Bella's like, "Well, Victoria's been hunting me." And Alice is like, "What?" Like the Cullens never once thought that Victoria would come back? Like, really? Like they were like, "No, that threat has been neutralized." Like you never once considered that maybe this woman who wanted to kill Bella less than a year ago would still want to kill her? Like I don't
just
understand.
like, how did she not even get like inadvertent visions? It doesn't make sense.
It just yeah. Anyway, Alice is like, "I have to go." Alice hasn't hunted in a while, so like Bella's smelling super good to her. And she's like, "I gotta go hunt." And Bella's like, "But you'll come back." And she's like holding onto Alice's collar and like
Oh my
hyperventilating.
god.
And I know that's like a very dramatic and like sad scene, but also it's like just the image of it is objectively hilarious because I feel like it's
What?
like the same image of someone being like, "Pull yourself together," like shaking someone by
Oh
the
my
collar.
god,
Like she
yeah.
specifically grabs onto the collar of her shirt. And I'm like, "Belle, what are you doing?"
Alice, this entire exchange is just like very frustrating because she's still like letting Bella think that like, you know, no one's coming back. Like Alice could have totally given Bella a heads up that like this is just Edward being a little bitch and like don't worry, it'll all work out. Like
Yeah,
instead
but
Alice is
like
like acting as if she's still gonna leave and like all this shit and like clearly doesn't take Bella's like mental like that feelings into account at
I
all.
just want to line up the Cullens and like slap them like one by one. Just give them a little slap. Why are you so rude to
Just like
Bella?
care about someone other than like this little bitch. Anyway, so she
Yourselves.
leaves and Jacob comes back because he's had like second thoughts and hopes that Bella isn't dead. And he tells her like like basically she tells him that Alice is back and he's like, I just had to like get information for the pack, like on what's going on. Charlie comes back and Bella is like, Alice is staying with us. Like she's just in the neighborhood. And Charlie like doesn't question. Alice is a high school
Charlie is
teenager.
obsessed with Alice.
She is, but like she's also a high school teenager. So like in what scenario would she just be like bopping around the quote unquote neighborhood on her own? Like he doesn't think that's weird at all.
I don't know. Yeah, anyway, Bella falls asleep on the couch. And I'm like, why didn't Alice carry Bella upstairs? Like, why do you let her sleep on
they
the
sleep
couch?
on the couch together. Like, why don't they just sleep in Bella's bed together, you know? Like, I don't know.
So, yes. But Bella, like, wakes up and, like, she pretends to be asleep. And, like, Charlie is, like, telling in the kitchen, like, telling Alice, like, how bad it was. Like, I know that, like, Edward, like, already knows, like, how bad Bella had it because, like, Alice had visions of her, like, in the last book. And, like, he can read Alice's mind. But, like, I really honestly wish that, like, Edward could read Charlie's mind because, like, Edward can only get vibes from Charlie's mind. He can't like read his mind clearly. And like I wish that he could read Charlie's mind just so that like Charlie, like he would just be like a little bit tortured like every fucking time. Like he was near Charlie. Like he had to see like pictures of Bella because like he fucking deserves it. Anyway, but this is the point when Charlie is like, it's been good. Like she's been better with Jacob. And like Jacob and her are pretty similar because like Jacob has had to take care of Billy physically the way Bella took care of Renee emotionally.
It matured him. Like,
yeah, I'm like, well, okay, on one hand, I'm glad that Charlie acknowledges it. But on the other hand, if you knew that was happening, why the fuck didn't you get custody?
Yeah,
like, again, exactly. Parentification is a form of abuse.
Right. Also, like, I said that. And also, like, Bella definitely also took care of Renee physically. Like, you're telling me that the cooking and cleaning started with Charlie? Like, no, it's because she came from a household where that was the expectation.
And it was the taxes and it was the electric bill. And it was like Bella providing house and home for Renee, basically.
Right.
The reason Bella has a checkbook is because she's been paying the fucking bills for 20 years.
And that's what makes me think, like, the real reason Charlie never fought for custody was because he just didn't want it. Because, like, Bella, like, because also when Bella's sick earlier with the stomach flu, like, she's like, Charlie's out of his element and he like goes to work like on a Saturday. And I suspect it's just because he wants access to a bathroom and like doesn't want to be the one around me. And like when Bella was like catatonic in the beginning, like, oh, Charlie tells Alice, like, I called Renee up here because I didn't want to have to be the one, like, if she had to go to the hospital or something. Like, he just didn't want to deal with it. And I'm like, all right, so maybe Charlie, like, been giving him too much credit this whole time.
Giving him too much credit. Just because in comparison to Renee.
Right, but like we don't know that he would have been better from the start, you know? Like he just didn't have access to her at 8 years old. Like who knows?
So like Charlie goes to work and Bella's hanging out with Alice and she's like, I should clean the house because I've been neglecting it by hanging out with Jacob these past 2 weeks. She's like, I wanted to do something to make life easier for Charlie, as if her whole existence does not revolve around making Charlie's life easier. Like what?
You know, Alice is talking to Charlie and they're talking about how like Charlie's like, I don't think it was like normal, like what she went through. And Bella's like, yeah, of course not. Because I didn't just like lose my true love. I lost my whole future, my family, a whole life that I'd chosen. And it just like, I don't know, it just goes to like Edward not understanding Bella at all because Bella does not simply change her mind. Like that's her like core personality trait. It's like once she makes a decision, she sticks to it. Also, Alice tells Charlie that Edward's in South America. Which yet again, I like how Charlie doesn't even question. Like, why is high school Edward popping around South America by himself? Like, he's like, well, I hope he's enjoying himself. And Alice is like, I wouldn't make any assumptions, Charlie. But like, why does Alice put up with Edward like ruining everyone's lives? Like, I just don't.
It's just because it doesn't ruin her life because she actually just doesn't care about Bella at all. Like, she just like doesn't give a shit.
So Alice is like grilling Bella about her friends, and she's like surprised when Bella can't tell her anything about them.
About the human friends. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know. Like, I get like even depression aside, like Bella probably wouldn't have been able to tell you anything about them. Like, even if she hadn't been depressed, like whatever. Jakey boy comes back and he and Alice have a little standoff. And Alice is like, I would never hurt Bella. And Jakey boy is like, I would never hurt Bella. And Bella's like, can I have a minute alone with Jakey boy? And then Alice runs out. And then like Jacob is once again trying to fucking kiss her. And Bella's like, oh no, I haven't made up my mind yet. I don't know. I don't know whether I want this. And like, I just feel like you can viscerally feel how much Bella's like, oh, I'm not sure about this. But Jacob is like, oh no, I want to kiss her. So we are going to fucking kiss now.
I'm not dumb enough to think that a rejection right now wouldn't have consequences. Like,
which is so like... Oh, and also because she's like maybe I could be with Jacob, but I don't know, I haven't decided yet. But like, you know like this, like the thing is that you know that like when Edward inevitably came back, like, she doesn't know Edward's inevitably going to come back, but we know like when Edward inevitably comes back, she would have ditched Jacob.
Well, that's what I'm
In a
wondering. With
heartbeat.
her whole, like, once I make a decision, I stick to it. Like, I feel like it would have been a lot of, like, agonizing and, like, hair
But she would have
pulling.
picked Edward. She
Yeah.
ultimately always would have picked Edward.
Yeah. I feel like Bella would have just been like, well, I made these promises, so the only choice is polygamy.
Alternatively, polyamory. Jacob and Edward enemies to lovers.
Indeed, that a true love triangle. Closing the triangle.
Polyamory, baby.
Yeah.
Let's make it happen in the Twilight universe. Anyway, the only reason Jakey boy does not kiss her is because the phone rings and he picks it up despite it not being his house. And he's like, Callin, our Swan residence. And on the phone, it's someone. We don't know who it is, but Jacob is immediately upset. And he's like, the voice on the phone is like, where's Charlie? And Jakey boy is like, he's not here. And the voice on the phone is like, asks something like, well, where is he? And Jakey boy is like, he's at the funeral. And then he hangs up. And he's like, and Bella's like, oh my God, that was like a Cullen, wasn't it? He was like, it was Dr. Carlisle Cullen. But we know that it was really Edward because, okay, so multiple things, multiple bonus content information happening here at once. One, in the first book discussion, I was like, why doesn't Carlisle have a British accent? Why doesn't Edward have a strong Chicago accent? Why doesn't Jasper talk in the Southern twang? It doesn't make any sense. And you were like, no, they're vampires. They don't have to do it. Except that when in Jakey boy's perspective, he picks up the phone and he hears an English accent.
Okay.
And that's why he thinks it's fucking Carlisle, because Carlisle has a fucking British accent.
Listen to me. But I was also affirmed because we learned from this chapter that both Alice and Edward are insanely, like, scarily good at imitating other people's voices.
Yeah,
Alice imitates Edward's voice. Yeah. So they would be very good at not speaking in their normal accent. Like, it should be very easy for them to pick up like a
but
American
I'm just saying,
accent.
Carlisle speaks naturally in a British accent. In a slightly English accent. That is canon. I was correct.
Shouldn't it be more like a Scottish accent with like the, the rhotic R's, because that's what it was at the time in England?
All right, listen, Rachel.
It should sound more like a Scottish accent to Jacob.
All I'm fucking telling you is that Carlisle speaks in an English accent, and that I was fucking right. And we have canon bonus content proof. It doesn't matter if it makes sense, Rachel. It only matters that I was right. Anyway. Now, back to the other bonus content information, we get Eddie Boy's perspective. So what happened behind the scenes was that Rosalie was like, I'm mean and I want Edward to come home because I'm so annoyed that everybody is sad without Edward and I just want us to be a family again.
But why is that said in a mean voice? It's totally reasonable.
listen. I'm imitating Stephenie Meyer's like the way Stephenie Meyer wants you to think of Rosalie. Again, there's nothing. It's just so reasonable.
She has Rosalie look at her own reflection multiple times in these 4 pages and think about how hot she is. And at one point, she's like, "I'm just so beautiful. I'm, I could think about what if I was born with a plain face and a boring body? Would I have a better character? Maybe, but who's to say? No point in thinking about it." Like, what?
Honestly, if I were as hot as Rosalie, like, I would probably be constantly staring at myself as well. Like,
no, but the fact that she's like, oh, maybe I'm a bad person because I'm pretty.
So Rosalie calls Edward and she's like, Edward, you can come home now. Like, we can all go back to Forks. Like, you didn't say we had to stay away from Forks. You just said that we had to stay away from Bella. And Edward is like, Bella moved. And Rosalie is like, I never said Bella moved. And Edward is like, oh my God, Bella's dead. And he called the Swan residence and like got Jacob, and it was all a miscommunication. But this whole scene, now we're going to Eddie Boy's perspective for this scene. This whole scene, Eddie Boy is in Rio de Janeiro. He is wearing the same clothes that he has been wearing for the past 8 months since he left Bella. He's not changed. And he is in literally a crawl space above some random family's home in like a low-income area of Rio de Janeiro. Like, this man is just like a fucking gremlin. Like, imagine like you go up to the attic to get the like Christmas lights down and you just see Edward like
literally like, quote, among the rats and the spiders. That's where he is.
Just in the fucking crawl space.
Contemplating like existence and being like such a whiny little like he's like quoting Shakespeare to himself.
So dumb. Yeah, so just know that this entire book, Edward has just been creeping around in like random people's attics and like being a sad little boy. I'm a fucking gremlin.
He's like, I can't go back to Bella. She's finally free from that longing for a soulless future. Like, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. I quoted to myself. He's talking to Rosalie. He's like, Rosalie is probably the only person who was enjoying my absence. He's like, it's hard to guess at her motives without her thoughts as a guide. Rosalie never made much sense to me. Her impulses were usually founded on the most convoluted kinds of logic. Rosalie and Edward are the same person, and they just like, for some reason, like Rosalie gets shit for it, but Edward doesn't. He even admits it. Like Rosalie is like, stop thinking about only yourself. And Edward's like, interesting advice, Rosalie. Let me tell you a little story about a pot and a kettle. But like, yes, it's you two. You are the pot and
Yes.
kettle.
Well, at least like, oh, Edward, do you not understand that is a self roast? You are saying that you are the pot and Rosalie is the kettle. That you are the fucking same. Oh my. Okay. Anyway, Eddie Boy is ready to yeet himself off the metaphorical cliff because he thinks Bella's dead. And the vampire metaphorical cliff is actually the Volturi. And he's going to go there and he's going to ask them nicely if they will kill him. And if they say no, he is going to cause some fucking chaos in the city of Voltura. So Alice sees all this and she's like, oh God, fuck. And she comes in and she's like, that wasn't Carlisle on the phone. And Jacob is like, are you calling me a liar? And immediately in my head, I'm like, well, I ain't calling you a truther.
God. Yeah, Alice is like, I can't ask you to come with me, Bella. Like, it's too dangerous. And that's like, that brings us to the core problem of this entire series is that everyone keeps underestimating how whack rabid both Bella and Edward are. Just like the sheer extent. Because Rosalie's like, Edward would never kill himself. Like, no way. It's like, no, Edward would definitely kill himself. Alice is like, Bella would never suicidally go into the vampire city to save Edward. It's like, that's Bella's like number one choice of activity.
Yeah, it doesn't even make sense because Alice, at least she knows that Edward is like that melodramatic and that like that much of a drama queen, because the only reason that they have time to save Edward is because he quote gives into his dramatic desires. So Alice knows this is one of Edward's core personality traits, and yet every time she's still shocked by it.
Well, Alice isn't shocked by Edward because Alice would never have told Edward about Bella dying. It's Rosalie. No. It's Rosalie's mistake for that situation, but like it's just constantly like every care. But Alice is for some reason surprised by Bella at every turn, like for no reason. Yeah. So Bella's like, all right, I'm immediately fucking going. She luckily has a passport because Renee like wanted to get married in Mexico but never did, but like luckily Bella has a passport and they're out of there. Jacob is like asking her not to go. Bella's like doesn't even give him the time of day.
And Alice is like, once again, so they're in the fucking flight to Italy, and Alice is like, once again, listen, this is dangerous as fuck. If we don't get there in time, like I'm making you come home. Like you're not like you're coming back to Forks. And Bella's like, I doubt it. This is perfect. If Edward dies, I get to die too. And I'm like,
they're talking through the plan, and like Alice is like, and if we don't get to him in time, they'll get us. And Bella's like, yeah, and if we don't get there in time, the Volturi will get us. And then she's like, I realized a second too late. I sounded a little too happy when I said that. And like, Alice is like,
and Alice is also like, honestly, like this is ridiculous. Like it's so fucking absurd that you're not a vampire yet. Like I know it's gonna fucking happen. And Bella is like, yes, bite me now in the middle of this crowded international flight. And Alice is like, better not, but I will change you eventually. And then Bella's thought process, because she still thinks Edward like broke up with her because he doesn't love her, he doesn't want to be with her. So Bella's thought process is like, if I get turned into a vampire, I can stalk Edward forever. And I'm like, this is why they're soulmates. This is why Jacob never stood a fucking chance. Because as like terrible as Jacob is, he is in no way on the level of an unhinged that Edward and Bella are. Like they are just in another universe of just absolutely bonkers ways of thinking. They land in Italy. And then Alice is like, we need a fast car. And she looks at Bella and she says the most iconic line of New Moon. How strongly are you opposed to grand theft auto? Bing, 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 bing. And she rolls up in a yellow Porsche 911 Turbo.
Zoom, zoom.
They rip through the Italian countryside just like we did in our rental car in the year, what was it, 2010 or 2011?
2009.
Okay, whatever, 2009. Because we teased this in our Twilight episodes. You thought that we had already gone far enough when we told you how we went to Forks and La Push and even found La Bella Italia in Port Angeles. But no, at the age of 12, I was such a big Twilight fan that when my family took a trip to Italy that summer, I was like, we're going to be near Volterra and we're going to rent a car because we're going on a little road trip. And you all are going to have to indulge me by allowing me to take you on a day trip out of our vacation to go to Volterra, Italy. So anytime anyone wants to fucking come for me about them being a quote unquote bigger Twilight fan than me, let me just remind you that I had the power of fandom was so strongly in my blood as a 12-year-old that I co-opted a whole day out of our only week-long vacation.
10 days, at least.
Like 10 days. Okay, still, but like a relatively short vacation, a whole day. Basically, we went to Volterra, Italy.
It was great. It was very nice. There's no square, unfortunately, with the clock tower. That's not accurate. Stephenie did not do her research on that one or anyone, but
they didn't film. Yeah, they didn't film it in Volterra because Volterra doesn't have a fountain, but it does have. You'll see later. It does have a like sewer grate, / spooky well underneath the clock tower. It also has a giant random castle with a lot of turrets, which is definitely where the Volturi live. So like all I'm saying is like, it's not only possible, but it's probable that the Volturi actually live in Volterra, Italy. And it's actually just a genuinely nice city. So if you want just like
very
an old
similar to the movie one,
Yes, it's just a beautiful like hilltop Italian city in the middle of like
you have a picture of a spooky grate?
I don't have a picture of the spooky grate, but I vividly remember going inside the clock tower and like at the end of a hallway being like, oh, look, a spooky grate. This is how you get into the Volturi headquarters.
A vivid image, yeah.
Anyway, we'll post pictures.
Alice like bribes their way into the city, but she's like, I can't go with you because if Edward hears my thoughts first, he'll like immediately just bolt.
Alice specifically bribes their way into a city with a $1,000 bill.
Yep.
Which, folks, I looked this up because I was like, I don't want to call Stephenie out on this because that may have $1,000 bills did exist. They were discontinued in 1969. Why does Alice have a $1,000 bill ready to hand off?
Alice has been around since 1969.
I know, but why does she have this like casually on hand to hand off? Why does this Italian guard accept it?
Maybe it's like how, I always keep a little bit of cash in my wallet, but like I barely ever use it. So like, it's been just like 40 years later. Yeah. Yeah, good point.
Anyway, they roll in. It is the St. Marcus Day Festival because it's the day that St. Marcus drove the vampires out of the city, except the vampires never left the city, and Marcus is actually one of the 3 main Volturi brothers.
Volterra is one of the safest cities in the world. From vampire attacks, at least.
Yeah, because they're not allowed to hunt. No one's allowed to hunt in their city. So
like
if you live in Volterra,
DoorDash.
not for eating.
Yeah.
Not for eating if you live in Volterra.
Yeah.
Keep that
everyone
in mind,
else gets Uber Eats in DoorDash. So Bella has to like run. She like is pushing through the crowd. Like,
and this is the prologue. Friends, if you were wondering like, oh my god, is Bella gonna trip and die, this is it. Your question will be answered.
She whacks her little shins into the fountain, which is just like a terrible feeling, and then she gets in like jeans and shoes, everything is to run through the fountain to get to Edward, which means that her shoes and jeans are definitely wet for the rest of this like book, basically until she gets home. Like horrible.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Anyway, she gets over there and she slams into Edward and he doesn't even notice that she's like pushing him back.
And then he's like, amazing. Carlisle was right. So this bitch does believe that vampires have
Because
souls. Fuck you.
he thinks that he's in heaven because he sees Bella because
Yeah.
he thinks Bella's dead.
But as Bella's running up, she like sees Edward's like being creepy in an alleyway because he's abandoned the crawl spaces. Now he's in dark alleyways. He's about to step into the sun. He's waiting specifically until noon again because he has very dramatic desires. And there's a little family that's like there for the festival, and Bella like sees like the little girl in the family like turn around and be like, oh, like who is that creepy man standing in the
So fucking shirtless. Like, he's so creepy. God. Oh my
So
God.
then Edward is finally like, oh my God, fuck, I'm not dead. Bella's here. Bella's alive. Like the Volturi are coming for me, and the Volturi arrive. And first it's Felix and Dimitri who are just like the muscle, and they're like ready to eat everyone. And then Alice appears and they're like, oh no, it's an even match. But then Jane, the small 14-year-old played by Dakota Fanning and a lot of eye makeup in the movies, comes up and she's like, everyone, you're gonna come with me. And Edward is like, ah, fuck. Jane could kick all of our
Which
ass.
is hilarious because I honestly feel like Dakota Fanning, like reading this and thinking of Dakota Fanning as a child actor, she was honestly a perfect cast for this. Like maybe she's a year or two too old to be like, you know, quite the like really young preteen, but she's perfect except for the fucking hideous eye makeup. But what I realized when we rewatched this time is that no one else has eye makeup like that. So did she just like do it herself? Like was that like her like
I
addition?
actually did it myself.
Yeah, because that's so on brand. Like imagine you're 14, it's 2009. Like that's exactly the kind of shit like any of us would have done, and it would have been so unfortunate. But like, who allowed that to happen? Like who? For what? Like,
Okay. So they all have to go and hang out with the main Volturi bitches, and they hop in the little sewer. They climb down into a sewer, and there's like an underground elevator, and like I don't know why they have this convoluted way of getting there, but they do. They're all going to meet the main Volturi dudes, which are Aro, Caius, and Marcus. Aro is the main honcho. Marcus is just depressed. That's his personality trait. Caius is a little bitch, but blonde. And they roll up, and Bella sees like a secretary that's human. And she's like, oh my God. She's like so shocked that a human would work for vampires. And I'm like, you're right there. You are a human who hangs out with vampires regularly. Why is this so surprising to you?
But she's shocked because she knows they eat people, and she knows that like we find out that this human like knows there's a she's exactly like the familiars in What We Do in the Shadows, might I say. Like she just like knows that they eat people. She knows they might eat her, but she just like really wants that chance at like immortality.
It's like,
Can I also say that so all the like Volturi I'd say were like very well cast in the movies, like we were talking about this, except Caius seems a bit too young. Like he's younger than his brothers, which made me say like maybe he got turned first, but he didn't like bother turning his other two brothers for a while. Like he just like let them sweat it out for a little bit. He's like, I'm gonna be the only one who's 20 forever. Like the rest of y'all bitches can be like in your 50s. Like
they all trounce in. Aro, the head honcho, who is played by Michael Sheen, who is just like fully embodies the character. Like I've never watched a performance by the actor and been able to tell that the actor was just having like the time of his life more than Michael Sheen playing Aro in Twilight. Like, you know, Michael Sheen was like, this is literally my like magnum, like this is my best role ever. I will never top like this, because he's just so into playing this like absolutely batshit like maniacal vampire. Like he's so into it. Aro is Jane's daddy. Like she comes over and she's like, Papa, I have brought some people for you. And he's like, good girl, pat, pat, pat. And then he's like, hello, Edward, you are not dead. Congratulations. Also, they all look really weird. Their like skin looks papery. And we find out, I forget in what bonus content. In some bonus content, we find out that the reason is because they're like, because they've been in power for so long, like they don't, I guess they don't get like regular exercise.
It's not bonus content. It's from like Stefan and what's his face, the Romanians in Breaking Dawn.
No, but like we get more like a more detailed description of like essentially it's just because they've been living in their tower for so long and like not going out and like hunting and like running regularly. But it's basically just like the Volturi are like turning slowly into rocks because they don't get regular exercise.
So Aro's gift is that it's kind of like Edward's, except that he has to touch you, but he can see every thought you've ever had, and somehow he can like process all of that in like a second, which means Edward has let Aro see his thoughts, which means that he's fucking outed his entire family, including Alice and all of their gifts, to the Volturi. He not only knows everything about them, he knows all of their thoughts. Like, he's just like completely like giving them up. It's worse than like the betrayal of like me getting ancestry DNA done and therefore like outing all of you if you've like committed any serial murders. Like, they can find you now through me. It's like he just like completely like did not give a fuck. I guess he like wasn't. I guess like they don't really, the Cullens don't really get this like sinister, like cynical view of the Volturi until like later, to where they're, you know, they're just like manipulating everyone and like pretending to be like the good guys.
I feel like they kind of do.
But they should have known.
In this book, they definitely talk about how the Volturi collect people who have gifts,
Mm-hmm.
and how like whenever they distribute judgment, they'll like kill a whole clan, but then like Ara will be like, oh, this one person was super repentant, so we're gonna let him live, and it just happens to be the person who like has like mind control or whatever.
Yeah,
so
but I think
like,
they always
they
thought it was, like,
know that the
a
Volturi are
coincidence.
like power hungry.
Yeah, so and Edward can like see Aro's thoughts, so like what? Like,
yeah, anyway.
He should know.
So basically the gist is that Aro wants to collect Alice. That's just like important. He like wants Alice because she can see the future. He also wants Eddie Boy. He's also like, wow, Bella has that like super strong like mind shield thing even as a human. Like, I bet she's super powerful as a like vampire, because even now she can stand up to both him and Jane, who like can cause people pain just by looking at them. And so he's like, all three of you would be welcome to join. And he asked Edward, he asked Alice, they're both like, no. And then he's like, Bella? And she's like, me? But I'm like, why? Take advantage of it, Bella.
Yes.
Just say yes and let him turn you into a vampire.
And then just dip. Like, what?
You're allowed to dip from the Volturi.
Yeah. Right. Like, people have done it. Carlisle, the revolutionary guy, like, what? It makes no sense. And here's the thing is like, so Aro's like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, if you had any intent to turn her into a vampire, like, it would be different. But as it is, she's a liability, which like, I don't know why she'd be a liability, whatever, but she is. And they're like, but for this, only her life is forfeit. But like, first of all, why isn't Edward also in trouble? But second of all, they're like, if she betrays our secrets, are you prepared to destroy her? But like, that doesn't make sense because wouldn't the damage already be done at that point? But
well, it's the same thing as why they have the human secretary.
Right. I know.
They're like, we're either going to turn the human secretary or we're going to eat her.
Well, yeah,
she's allowed to
they make it sound like they'd only kill her if she already betrayed the secrets. But this just goes back to Edward's whole thing of like, he would literally rather have Bella be dead than be a vampire, because he's like, he won't even like promise to turn her, because Aro gives him the chance to like read his thoughts. He won't even do it. So it doesn't make sense. Like, I feel like the logical thing with like Edward's whole cult leader thing right now would be to like kill Bella the second she gets them to turn her. Like, it makes no sense. Yeah. But luckily Alice steps in, save the day.
And Alice is like, I've had visions, here, read my thoughts. And Aro like doesn't know that Alice's visions like are useless. So he's like, yeah, definitely she's gonna be a vampire. Sounds good. All right, you guys can all leave.
Which makes no sense, because Aro should already know about that from reading Edward's thoughts. B, if he can see every thought she's ever had, wouldn't he also see her like interpretation, her gloss of like, this is subjective? Whatever. He buys it. They get out.
Whatever.
But not before they see the newest batch of DoorDash crumble cookies on the way, which is like a bunch of like human tourists.
Led by like this really hot lady who's like rosily hot, and her name is Heidi, which is the name of Stephenie Meyer's sister. Like, what a great like that's what you want. Like, when your sister's an author, like, give her the really hot character. Like, she may be evil, but she's really hot.
Yeah, a lot better than like a Jacob move. Like,
they're waiting in like the reception room or whatever, like the like reception area, like until sunsets, and Bella starts having a panic attack, and Alice is like, maybe you should slap her. Like,
yeah,
Alice,
I know. That's yet another thing.
Do you want to snap her neck?
That's no. Oh yeah, right. But that's yet another thing along the lines of like the padded cell and the psychoanalysis and the seeing a shrink, because that's not a real treatment. It's a sexist like hysterics, right? That's where it comes from. They don't even use that language anymore. Like,
but anyway, they just sit in the reception room staring into each other's eyes the entire time. Like, they literally just like fucking weirdos. They sit there and stare into each other's eyes until they finally can leave. And now it's like the adult party for the festival. And I'm like, oh, imagine like if Stephenie Meyer weren't a coward, like the kind of kink that we could get. Like, I just feel like that could be really cool.
This also just gives me such a feeling of like, I just feel like so many times we'd like be on vacation as a family and like, you know, we're kids, but like you see like some kind of like cool like adult party or like thing going on, you're like in the streets and you're like, oh, I wish I could like do this, but I have to like go to bed at 9 p.m. in my family's hotel room. Like, I don't know. Which like realistically I wouldn't have had fun at all, but like it's the, you know, FOMO.
No, I would have hated
Yeah.
that. Like,
Yeah.
it would have been horrible. I would have wanted to go
Yeah.
home immediately.
Yeah.
But
You
yeah,
just
so
wanna be
they're
asked.
flying back. They're flying back. Bella's like, I am not gonna sleep. She even gets a Coke from the waitress. And Edward is like, Bella, don't have the Coke, because he knows her intolerance to caffeine.
Because well, what's important to say is that this entire time, Bella still thinks that Edward will dip immediately, and the only reason he wanted to kill himself is because he felt guilty about her death. It wasn't
Yeah.
because he still loves her.
Like, they're on the airplane and she's like, maybe I should talk to him now. But like, she's like putting off talking to them because she thinks like you know, she'll be able to squeeze some more time out of him. But she's like, maybe I should talk to him now on this airplane. He couldn't escape me on an airplane. Well, not easily, at least. And I'm just having visions of Edward like going to the emergency exit, ripping it open, and just yeeting himself out there.
That would kill everyone in the plane, though. Well, more realistically, he would just like find a way to like break into the storage compartment and then like barricade himself in, like, or like the, you know how like
the whole time in the bathroom.
So yeah, so she's like, she's like, I could ask him right now, but like, let me spin this out Scheherazade style. Like, maybe I can make it last a few more nights, so he has to stay around to like talk to me.
What does Scheherazade mean? Is that a vaguely racist thing?
No, it's the story of the 10,000 Nights. It's a story where like she has the king, and it's like, good night, Wesley. I'll sooner kill you in the morning, but it's like the king, you know. So
they roll up to the airport. All the Cullins are there as the welcome committee. Fucking Alice runs up to Jasper, and they don't embrace. They specifically do not kiss or hug. They just stare into each other's eyes. And Bella's like, it was somehow more intimate. And I'm like, no, it's just weird. It's just weird. Okay, anyway, Rosalie's like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. And Bella's like, oh, it's okay. And Rosalie's like, oh my god, Edward, I'm so sorry. And Edward is like, go fuck off, Rosalie, forever. And then Bella eventually falls asleep, and she sleeps for 14 hours, which seems excellent. But then she wakes up and Edward is in her bed naturally, and she's like, oh my god, it's a dream.
She's like, I must be dead because I'm seeing Edward. Like, both of them assuming that they're dead because they can see the other person. Edward's like, you're not dead. And she's like, sure, that's what you want me to think, which is a Jacobism, the sure. Like, I noticed that throughout like midway through the book, Bella starts saying that, and Jacob has been saying it this whole time. And Billy says it too, like, because it's, you know, you hang out with someone, you start like picking up their like mannerisms and sayings, you know.
Wow, Stephenie. Good on you. That's a nice little subtlety there. Yeah, so anyway, this bitch Edward does not apologize for leaving her. But he does apologize for leaving her to Victoria's mercy. Like, that's what he's like, oh my god, like, I never would have left you if I knew Victoria was hunting. Like, not for sending her into a depression spiral just because he's like, Victoria could have killed you. I'm like, and I don't think he ever really apologizes for the depression spiral. I mean, in his perspective, he's like, I'm ready. Like, I know I'm going to like go crawling back eventually, and like, I'll grovel if she like wants me to grovel. Yeah. But like, that doesn't actually happen in the book.
I mean, in like the real world, like, you're not really responsible for someone's like reaction, like,
except that he knew it was going to happen.
Yeah. And also like
it was going to happen.
And also, well, I mean, but if he actually like wasn't into her and wanted to leave her, like, it wouldn't be like something he should feel guilty for. But the fact that he like didn't even want to,
no, but he didn't. That's the thing, is he was always going to come back.
Yeah. And Bella like doesn't trust that he's not going to leave. She's like, he could leave at any moment. Like, I have to keep him talking. And then it finally comes out that Bella like thinks that he only went to Volterra because he felt guilty. And Edward's like, Isabella Marie Swan. The strangest expression crossed his face, almost as if he were mad.
And I just like, you literally, your whole modus operandi at the beginning of the book was convincing her that you didn't love her anymore. Right. And quite frankly, it is entirely on brand, in character, realistic, that Edward would go to try to kill himself in Italy because he felt guilty. That is 100% a thing that Edward would do, and Bella knows it.
To the max. Like,
don't tell me that's not something that you would do even if you didn't still love her. Fuck you, Edward.
God, yeah, he's like, you believed me so quickly. Like, I thought I was gonna have to like lie to your face for hours. But like, you know, it is a little like, I guess Bella buys into the whole like, oh, vampires are flighty and like change their mind, like they're capricious or whatever. But like, it literally was 2 days after he said he was gonna kill himself if she died.
Yeah.
But I guess it just speaks to Bella's like very low like self,
Right.
worth,
Self-worth
self-view.
at the beginning of
Yeah.
the book. But like also he assumed, he's like, I can't believe you thought that that I didn't always love you. Like he assumed that like she jumped off the cliff because she was so depressed, and yet he still thinks that like, yeah, she knows that I've loved her this entire, like it doesn't make any sense. It's just like your
No.
actions do not meet up with your words. Again, back on his bullshit. Edward is back. Logic is no longer in the plot.
He's never off his bullshit. He's just brought it from his crawl space back to forth. Like that's all that's happened.
He's been coming up with the most convoluted schemes with the rats this entire
Oh
time.
my god, like I'm surprised that house didn't explode from like that much like compressed bullshit in one space.
Yeah, he's like just the audacity of him to be like, how could you believe me? Like, how could you ever believe me? At least, however, I will give Edward this, is he is like, if you have moved on, because Bella like doesn't want to kiss him because she's like afraid it's going to send her into depression spiral like when he leaves again. And Edward is like, oh, have you moved on? Like, that's fair. So like, I will give Eddie Boy this. He's at least willing to step aside.
That girl that we follow on TikTok, I can't remember her handle right now. I would look it up, but we're permanently banned. Brought this up. Like, do we think that Edward would actually have honored that? Would he actually have left her alone, or would he have been like secretly spying on her the whole time and eventually possibly also dated her and Jacob's 17-year-old daughter?
He would have spied on her, but I think he would have allowed her to date someone else. He just would have been in like the trees on every single one of her dates. But he would have left. She wouldn't have known that he was there.
No. But the thing is, if she was with Jacob, assuming that this is a world where she only has two choices and she can't possibly like grow up and meet someone like 6 years down the line, whatever, Jacob would have smelled him. Like Jacob would have known. It would have been a lot harder for him to get away with it because unlike Charlie, Jacob can smell him.
The point is that doesn't happen because Bella's like, no, I love you. And I really need Edward to admit, like, it doesn't happen, but I need him to admit that like Bella can love him as much as he loves her, and that he was stupid to leave in the first place, and that like, because he still seems to believe that it was the right move. He's like, I had to try.
Right. And Bella is rightfully, because of that, still skeptical. Like Edward's like, if I hadn't thought you'd be better off, I'd never be able to leave. Like I'm far too selfish. I could never leave again. And Bella's like, but it's not like you didn't think the first decision through. Like you'll end up doing whatever you think is right, regardless of what you promised to me, because despite the fact that you keep other convoluted promises and make me keep them, like you're a fucking liar. And then we get him being like, trying to like explain how important she is. And he's like, before you, my life was like a moonless night. You were like a meteor across my sky. And I like how in both of their metaphors, because in her earlier metaphor, she's like, I'm like a moon whose planet has been exploded in some cataclysmic thing. In both of these metaphors, he's the planet, she's the orbit object. Like both of them are like, I don't know what that says.
Edward's the center of the universe.
Right. To both of them. Like, I don't know.
So she's like, so you still won't fucking turn me into a vampire? Like, are you kidding me? Like, don't worry, I already got Alice to promise, but like, why are you still being such a little bitch about this? And he's still on his like, vampire equal hell train. And she's like, well, the Volturi are going to come looking for me. And he's like, well, time means different for them. So like, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't even think of you by the time you were 30. And Bella's like, 30? Oh, I might as well be in a wheelchair by then. That's so decrepit.
It made me laugh because it's like
shaking.
Bella goes to jail for dating a 17-year-old when she's 30. God. Jesus Christ. And he's like, Edward's like, what choice have I? What choice have I? I cannot be without you, but I will not destroy your soul. And I'm just thinking, like, what are they going to do in this, like, convoluted scheme? Like, is Charlie going to go into hiding too? And Bella's like rightfully roasts him. She's like, he spoke as though he'd put endless amounts of thought into this asinine plan. And I was like, it's because he has. Your boyfriend is an idiot. He's an idiot wannabe cult leader. Like, he's Jim Jones with less IQ points, if that's possible.
He's a cult follower. He's like the second in command. Carlisle's the cult leader.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so I think that's why I like, because I actually really like this scene, like this whole scene. And I think the reason I like it so much is I think because like the new and improved Bella is here ready to call Edward on his bullshit in a way that like she wasn't before.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's ready to be like, that is literally the stupidest shit I've ever heard in my entire life. She just like gets out of bed, like she's like only been reunited with the love of her life for like 20 minutes, and she's like, this is stupid. Like I have like self-confidence now. Like I'm not putting up with this shit. She like gets up, starts looking for her shoes, and Edward is both like, what are you doing? You can't leave. But also, here are your shoes, sweetie. I don't want you to fumble around in the dark. Because he's a simp. Bella's like, what did I not just fly all the way to fucking Italy to stop you from killing yourself?
God, she's like, this isn't about you anymore. And
she's ready to jump out the window.
Yeah, he took me in his arms and sprang lightly from my window, landing without the slightest jolt, like a cat. Like a cat. She's like, wait, so he's running with her through the forest, and she's like, apparently riding Edward was something you never forgot, like riding a bicycle.
But yeah, so Bella's like, she like has a whole epiphany, and she's like, oh my God, the hallucinations weren't, you know, me going crazy or like me just like, I don't know, like trying to like whatever cope.
Wish fulfillment.
They were actually like my brain like telling me that Edward loved me. Like, oh my God, Edward does love me. Like I don't have to like earn that love. Like, you know, she's like suddenly like healthy, you know, as healthy as it's possible to get in this book series, you know, version of love. And she's like, wow, it's great. Self-confidence, like upgrade complete. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then she's like, you know, we still have problems. Like, you have to turn me into a vampire. Like, we still have problems. Like, Victoria's obviously a problem. And then she's like, but Victoria's not the worst of it. And he's like, what's the worst? And she's like, you leaving me again is worse than the Volturi killing me. And he gets so upset. And I'm just like, good.
The Burning Man makes its first appearance.
Yeah,
which will come back in Breaking Dawn. Yeah,
and I'm like, frankly, like I think Edward would benefit from being thrown into a fire just briefly.
Oh my God, little singe. He's like, I'll win your trust back somehow, even if it's my final act. And I'm like, girl, don't not take him seriously, because like that would be exactly in line as some kind of like life-threatening bullshit to like quote unquote win your trust back. So also the fact that, can I just say, speaking of the hallucinations, the fact that Bella only hallucinates Edward when he's angry is like fucked up. Like that's either an abuse symptom or a kink. I'm not sure. But
it's a little bit of both, honestly.
So they get to the Cullen's house, and she's like, this is when she's like, oh, there's no dust or anything anywhere, which makes me realize, like, why would there be dust? The only dust is mostly skin particles, right? So the only human skin particles in their house would be Bella. So unless she thinks that like she personally like had created enough dust in their house in like the week that she was there, or like I don't know how long over the summer. Anyway. And Bella's like rolls up and she's like, this isn't just about Edward. Like, you're not the center of the universe, just my personal universe. She's like, we're going to put it to a vote because you guys are all in danger now because the Volturi might roll up at any moment. So you all get to vote.
And Edward has like some convoluted plan to like avoid it, but like it's stupid. So we're not going to talk about it.
So, and Bella's like, but I won't force myself on you. If you guys vote no, I'll just go back to the Volturi on my own. Which presumably to die, but why not just go back and be like, make me a fucking vampire? Like,
and
where's
then
your
stalk Edward forever?
Plan?
It'll be great. Yeah.
And so they all vote. Everyone says like so they go in line. They say yes. We get to Rosalie, and she's like no, but she's like, let me explain. She's like, I would never have chosen this life for myself. I wish there had been someone there to vote no for me. But like the whole issue is that Rosalie didn't get a vote at all, right? Like if Rosalie as a human had a vote, why would she have wanted anyone else to have a vote? She would have wanted her vote to be like the overriding one.
When Jasper votes in the movie, Jasper votes yes, and he's like, it would be nice not to want to kill you all the time.
God. So we get to Carlisle, and Edward's like, no, like before Carlisle even talks, because he can read his mind. And Carlisle's like, it's the only way that makes sense, which I just take as a roast of Edward. Like, you're just nonsensical. Edward's reaction is to go in the other room and violently destroy his piano, which if you're not aware,
no, it's not. Rachel, this was on Stephenie Meyer's website in the FAQ. He doesn't destroy the piano. He goes out and rips a plasma TV in half. Like an expensive limited edition, like hasn't been released to the wider market, like TV that Emmett really likes to use. He rips it.
Oh my God. If you're not aware, like I'm pretty sure that like, you know, people who have such anger issues that they like punch walls or like destroy things, like that's a huge predictor of domestic violence. Like you guys, I mean, you know the statistic of like if your partner hits you, like their chances of killing you go up like 700%. It's like almost the same. If your partner is like punching things and like hitting objects when they're angry with you, like your chances of domestic violence are like skyrocketing. So this is like a huge red flag from Edward. And then he comes back in And he's like, no, no, no. And then he gets in Bella's face.
Because Bella is like, all right, Alice, where do you want to do this?
Oh, yeah.
And Alice is like,
He gets in his face, his expression twisted with rage. Edward grabbed my face in his hand, forcing me to look at him. And then Carlisle's like, I could do it. And Bella's like, sounds good. I hoped he could understand. It was hard to talk clearly the way Edward held my jaw. Like, what the fuck? And she's like, there's no reason for it not to be now, I said, the words coming out distorted. He's very good at moderating the pressure he's putting, because if he wasn't, her face would be crushed in seconds, just like that plasma TV. So he's like intentionally applying this amount of like, not that unintentional would be better, but like he knows I don't know. It's just like fucked.
Yeah. Anyway, so they agree to wait until after Bella graduates. And then they like roll back and Edward is like, please give me more time. And then Bella is like, no more time. And Edward is like, well, if you want me to change you, you have to do one thing. And she's like, what? And he's like, marry me.
Yep.
And in the movie, I really think in the book, like we get some like her reaction like after that. But in the movie, it's just like Edward's like, marry me. And then we get Kristen Stewart going like, and then it just cuts off. And like, that's the end of the movie. And I'm like,
she
wow.
What out weirdly. Yeah.
She like does a little gasp. She's like, yeah. But no. Anyway, Bella's like, no. And Edward is like, me.
Bella's like, I'm only 18. Edward's like, well, I'm 110. It's time I settled down.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's creepy. Why do you want to do it with a child? Yeah. So then Charlie comes in and he's like, why did you run off again? Edward is back. And she's like, Edward and I are a package deal. You have to let him in the house. And then she's like, I will also do all the chores and laundry and dishes until you think I've learned my lesson. And I'm like, she does those anyway?
I know.
She does those anyway.
Yeah,
what do you mean?
I wrote that too. Yeah, like what the fuck? So Bella like lays down the law with Charlie.
So now it's the epilogue. Everything has like gone back to normal. Bella and Edward are like bopping around again. And Bella's like, oh, I'm causing Jacob pain by being with Edward. But meanwhile, like, it's Jacob who's not returning her calls. And I'm like, how come Jacob is allowed to freeze Bella out whenever and like not the other way around? Like,
right.
Like if you don't want to be friends with her, fine, but like you should tell her that. Like you don't get to just like ignore her and then have the audacity. So Bella gets home one day and she sees the fucking motorcycles in her front yard that Jacob has brought to narc on her to Charlie. And fucking Jacob has the audacity to be like, oh, I brought these so that you would get grounded because I thought Edward wasn't letting you come down to see me. So what? Jacob was like, I'm not going to return any of your fucking calls, but like I expect you to like come down to La Push and like force me to be friends with you again.
I know. I forgot about the motorcycle.
That's so childish.
Yeah, it's like
so manipulative.
Yeah.
All aboard the fuck Jacob Black train. Toot toot. Edward is like, you know, still being a manipulative dick, but he is like, Jacob, thank you for like being there for Bella, like when I wasn't.
So condescending. And Jacob, though. Like I don't. No, like
it's so condescending. He's such a dick. No. Edward is being a dick here, but then he's like, anything in my power, like I like will do for you like in return. And Jacob in his head is basically like break up with Bella again and leave her. And the audacity, like even it doesn't even make sense with what we have in that Jacob bonus content POV where Jacob is like so upset that like Bella's been so hurt by the vampire. So like he knows what it would do to her for Edward to leave again. And he still has the audacity to ask Edward to leave again. Thankfully, Edward is like, no, like that's not in my power or whatever. Like Bella has to like, yeah, for once they're like, Edward's like, no, Bella gets to decide this one thing. Anyway, Jacob is like, I'm also here. I'm not just a narc. I'm also here to remind you of the treaty where like it says like, not only can you not eat people, but like you can't bite them. Like ergo, you can't turn more people into vampires. And Bella's like, that's not your decision. And Jacob is like hell it isn't. And I'm like, no, it really isn't your decision, Jacob. It's really just Bella's decision. Like Bella's the only one who gets a choice. And I just in a Jacob bonus content, we get like Jacob's perspective is that Bella, and I mean we get this later on in the series too, is that Bella being turned into a vampire would like make her a shell of her human self. Like she wouldn't be Bella anymore. Like she would just be a monster. But he also thinks that he is a monster, but he doesn't think that he lost his self. You know what I mean? Like it's
Well,
just such like
he does a little
incongruent.
bit. He's like,
But like
maybe
he's
I'm less
so
human
like
than everyone else because I'm good at
yeah, but he's like
phasing.
I'm not like a shell of
Well,
myself.
it just doesn't make sense because it's not based. I guess it's just based on anti-vampire bigotry or whatever you want to call it. Because he has not literally not known a single human before they were a vampire, so he has no idea what it would do to her. You know, like he's not basing. It's just like Alice and Edward, like thinking Bella will be fine based on nothing but vibes, despite all evidence to the contrary. But like Jacob literally does not think that vampires are people. Like he's like shocked when like Alice has feelings. He's like, she almost seemed concerned that Edward's gonna kill himself. Like his mind state is that like they're not people, like, which is kind of not too far off from Carlisle and Edwards. You know what it is? I just thought of it. Yeah, I could totally see this whole like this idea that werewolves that like the Quileutes have, that vampires like aren't people and are like soulless like evil monsters. It could totally just be like from Carlisle back in the day making the treaty and like his self-flagellation and being like, oh, please accept me, a humble soulless monster, for your treaty. Like,
no, it's definitely they've met vampires before
Yeah,
Carlisle
I
and they were
know.
dicks. Yeah, and that's it. Jacob is a dick. Edward is once again back to manipulating Bella. And Bella, you know what? The only plus side we get is that Bella does have a little bit more of a backbone in this book. She always had a backbone, but like now she has a backbone in relation to Edward, which she didn't have before. So that's good, at least.
Catskill?
Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
yeah, it's off the charts.
well, the thing is, is I think it's got to be lower than Twilight.
67%
because
of the book is
Edwards
Jacob.
are because vampire like dogs are the main animals in this book.
But we need to think about it objectively. Even though Jacob turns into a canine, is he himself dog-like or cat-like?
No, he's like a bear.
A bear?
Yeah. Like a grizzly bear.
Think,
he's an irritable grizzly bear. That's what the wolves are.
I mean, I feel like the way that Bella describes him is kind of like it's like the way she tries to diss Mike Newton as being like a golden retriever, like, you know, cheerful and loyal. Like that's like basically how she describes Jacob, but just like doesn't see it as a negative.
Pre-transformation Jacob.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know we have to
transformation Jacob is just a dick.
Yeah, I know. We have to consider the whole book though.
Well, that's still dog. That's still not cat.
Yeah, I know. I was just trying to make sure we thought it through without just like jumping to the assumption that he's actually dog-like.
The Volturi are like extra cat-like though.
Some of them. Jane is like a mean dog that stares at you.
Oh no, I disagree. Jane bringing the gang back to meet Aro is like a cat like killing a mouse and bringing it back to you, like being like, look what I've done.
That's true. But like her whole power.
She like skips up to Aro and she's like, look, master, I brought them back.
But I feel like her power is very like evil, like mean dog, like just hackles raised, like staring at you. I don't know.
I feel like her power is like cat looks at you and then just randomly like hits you with its claws out and then like runs away.
Yeah.
It's like random chaos.
3, 2, 1, 7.
6.
I was gonna lower it, but I was gonna say like when I think about it logically, I feel like it should be lower, like 5 or 6, because of the huge chunk that's just Jacob. But like, what is Bella herself?
A zombie.
All right, Allison, where can they find us?
Well, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at We Read It One Night, Twitter at We Read It Podcast. You can email us, wereaditonenight@gmail.com. And God willing, by the time this episode comes out, unlikely, knock on wood, you'll be able to find us on TikTok again at We Read It One Night. Until that time, in the description, the link will say RIP next to TikTok.
And we could make a new TikTok. I just honestly don't know if I have like the emotional capacity to like risk that again, to like go through all of that only to have it like yanked out from underneath it. Like,
anyway,
Godspeed, comrades.
Godspeed.